Travolting, covering Pulp Fiction, with very special guest, Rebecca Johnson. Enjoy the episode. What's that? New theme music you hear? That's right, folks. Welcome back to Travolting.
Travolting.
Yeah, with our brand new theme song by our longtime composer and longtime friend, Michael Van Bodegum Smith.
Entering into era number 2.
The A-list era.
We've already got a name for it?
Yeah, the A-list era.
Did we? We already talked about this in the Beginnings era episode, didn't we?
I think so. It's the Beginnings era, the A-list era, and then the Decline era.
Oh, you thought of a name for the third one, too, the Decline era.
I mean, spoiler alert for everyone listening.
Well, it's also like, we talked about this in the last episode, how difficult it is to, like, pinpoint the arc of each era because it's so up and down.
Yes.
Because, like his first era, sure, in the 70s, it was a big rise, big fall in the 80s, and then a slight uptick in the 90s.
Yes, and then down again.
And then down again.
My contention for the three eras is that the first one, I mean, obviously the second one begins with Pulp Fiction, because that's his career revival. Mm-hmm. And A-list era goes until he's not getting A-list parts again. Even after we're going to talk about this, but even after Battlefield Earth, he's still getting A-list parts, just in bad movies.
Yeah.
Like, they're well-budgeted movies with other big stars, and then they're all just bad.
What do you think our special guest, Becca Johnson, thinks about this?
Yeah. I said so in the intro. We're joined by very special guest, Rebecca Johnson.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when I can chime in yet. I'm just looking over my notes and laughing at my own jokes.
Chime in with our... Yeah. We are joined by our longtime graphic designer, longtime friend, short-time girlfriend. Kidding.
Whoa there, buddy.
Part-time girlfriend, full-time graphic designer, Rebecca Johnson.
Ooh.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. I hope you guys like the redesign.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. You folks can take a gander at your Spotifys and your Apple Podcasts and your YouTubes right now.
Wherever you're listening.
And see the new logo art that Becca's designed for us for this new era.
It's looking great.
It's looking awesome.
Hell yeah.
Very excited.
Cool.
And what better way to ring in this new era than with one of arguably the most influential films of the past 30 years, possibly of all time. This movie changed the paradigm in Hollywood, kind of ushered in the indie boom of the 90s, made Miramax a real player, brought Harvey Weinstein to a major success.
And aren't we glad?
Yeah, it's the best thing that ever happened to Hollywood. He's doing great, the last I heard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're covering Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction today.
Did you hear that, Jeff?
What?
That ding noise?
I did not.
So that ding noise that the audience is going to be hearing, something that we're going to address here is... There are a lot of podcasts that talk about Pulp Fiction.
There are a lot of podcasts where specifically two white dudes talk about Pulp Fiction.
Just a couple of dudes.
Being dudes.
A couple of dudes talking about masterpiece Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. Oh, there's the sound again. So for our audience, we don't want to make this another like two film school white dudes who are douchingly talking about Pulp Fiction because it's not a perfect movie.
Yeah, it's not a perfect movie. It's a very good movie.
But it's a very good movie. But we are going to be honest about it.
Yes.
And we're going to try not to be your everyday podcast about
this podcast is going to be like a Quentin Tarantino movie.
And so every time...
We're going to be
non-linear?
We're going to be promising you that we're going to do something different. But then we're going to kind of just hand you a pastiche of other things that's going to be very good. But it's kind of still in the original ballpark of what we said it wasn't going to be. And that's not a slight to Quentin Tarantino. What he does very well.
There's another ding. So my point with that ding is whenever we say something that's remotely in the ballpark of douchey film school white dude talk, we're going to have this little ding noise here that we can't hear because I'm putting these dings in post-production.
Well, don't spoil it. You just blew away the bit.
Well, I'm just saying.
No, what really is happening is that we brought Mario in for a guest spot this
for
week.
God's sakes.
It's a me! And he's going to hit his little brick wall above him every time we say something.
It's basically a sound effect that you guys recognize that you're falling into film douchery because this is inevitable. It is Tarantino.
Yes.
You know.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And so we're just going to be upfront about it when those moments come.
You know what audiences love?
What do
They
audiences
love 5-minute discussions of the bit we're gonna do, taking away all the mystique of the bit.
I think Jeff is upset that you mentioned
Oh no,
it.
I think
I think Jeff is really upset. I mean, you have to give the audience the context for the bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then they're just not gonna. They have to like spend half the episode guessing what is that dinging noise, and then
That's
I think the sound effect should be Sam Jackson say, "Does he look like a bitch?"
or just him saying,
what? English motherfucker, do you speak it?
Does he look like a bitch? What?
That's my biggest thing I'll say right before we start is the fact that I do not like Sam Jackson. Before this, I did not like Sam Jackson. After this, I've elaborated that I only like Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction.
and Hateful Eight. You like him in that?
Oh, and Hateful Eight. I think Tarantino does right by Sam Jackson sometimes. I think his character in Django Unchained is like one of my least favorite characters in film ever. So Sam Jackson's on a spectrum for me, but he did it so well in this movie that he may have gained back my vote.
This
Yeah.
is a Sam Jackson powerhouse movie.
Oh, yeah.
John Travolta's great, but Sam Jackson has more big moments.
This movie revitalized Travolta's career, but it turned Sam Jackson into a pop culture icon.
Oh yeah.
Hands down.
Every
Absolutely.
Sam Jackson performance after this movie is some way a reflection on Pulp Fiction.
And
mean-
that is my biggest quarrel. But I mean, kudos for Sam Jackson for just playing Pulp Fiction in every movie in some variation or some corrupted version of it. Because this dude, can just sit back, do his thing, and just be like the baddest motherfucker. And that's my problem with like Nick Fury. That's my problem with like Snakes on a Plane. Like it's the persona of Sam Jackson that just perpetuates it because he's got real acting chops, and I feel like only Tarantino has really cracked that.
Which is why I love him probably the most in Unbreakable,
Oh, he's so good. in
Oh, I have not
Unbreakable.
seen that.
because he's not Sam L. Jackson in that movie.
Noted.
He's Elijah Price.
He is Elijah Price. He is not like
First name, Mr. Last name.
Well,
Glass.
now you're telling me to watch not only a Sam Jackson movie, but M. Night Shyamalan, who I also despise.
Unbreakable is
deeply.
one of his good ones. It's one of his good ones.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's-
only good one? That's all I heard you say.
His popularly, very accessibly named trilogy, the East Rail 177 trilogy.
No.
You would think it'd be called the Unbreakable trilogy, but it's actually called the East Rail 177 trilogy because
I rest my case.
both the inciting incidences of Split and Unbreakable take place on the same train.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wait, that's kind of dope.
yeah, the East Rail 177.
Wait, what was the inciting incident for Split?
I mean, spoiler for Split, Glass, and Unbreakable. But the train David Dunn is on at the beginning of Unbreakable when he gets into.
Wait, no, I haven't seen this. I haven't
not-
seen Unbreakable. I just said that like seconds ago.
I know the inciting incident for Unbreakable, but how does the train fit in for Split?
A certain character's father is on the same train,
Oh,
and that's why he has the split personality.
Got it.
He never overcame his father's.
I'm not going to have another M. Night Shyamalan movie spoiled for me. I had Sixth Sense spoiled for me.
Yeah. I'm actually going to talk a
By
fair
a
bit about the
BuzzFeed
Sixth
article.
Sense today.
Oh,
Why?
really?
No, because I think Bruce
Oh,
there's some
Bruce
Bruce Willis in this that very much equates with that.
Fair enough.
To lay the groundwork for our Pulp Fiction talk, though, because something that obviously should be addressed is this is none of our first time views, is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. For her. It was for her. Yes.
I've only ever seen through the does he look like a bitch scene, Ezekiel 25:17 scene. I have not seen past that. Yeah.
Wow.
So much so that I did not know Bruce Willis was in this movie.
So this is a really interesting dynamic to have on here.
This is my second time watching this.
Oh.
I think it's probably my third or fourth.
Yeah.
It's a movie I revisit every few years because it's so influential and it's just such an entertaining movie to watch.
Yeah.
I genuinely hadn't seen it at all, so much so that I thought the whole like Royale with cheese was in the middle of the movie. Which technically in the timeline, yes.
It technically is in the middle of
It
the
is technically in the middle, kind of. Non-linear narrative. Doing. So,
Yeah.
okay. But so, yeah, you're right, Jeff. This is a very interesting dynamic for going into talking about it. So
I did some research.
how much research?
I actually did this is the first time. Whoopsie. This is the first time. This is the first time on this podcast I've been able to, back to my high school routes of, you need 5 internet sources and 1 book source. I was actually able to cite a book for this episode.
It's almost like
Wow.
Pulp Fiction's been covered in a lot of ways.
It's right now, and after the past decade of movies where there's no information about the making of them whatsoever,
Which, yeah, we've done
there's
that
like
a lot.
Yeah.
one IMDb trivia thing about like look who's talking to, and that's it.
Yeah.
It was really exciting for me to have another movie we could talk about where I could really dig in and like read the history of it. And
I'm honestly excited for that portion of the podcast.
Yes.
Are we getting into it now, or
it's
was that, are we going to save it
that's
for?
what we're about to get right into.
Let's get into that.
But I was able to cite the book. It's here right there. Down and Dirty Pictures by Peter Biskind. I'd shout
I'm
it out.
looking at it right now.
I'd shout out for anyone who's interested in the 90s era of independent cinema. It's a really good book, as is the same author's, what's it called? Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, about the new Hollywood movement in the 70s. Great books if you're interested in the topic. That's a plug, just shouting out my source for a lot of this information. But I think we'll get right into it. You ready to dive into some history, Stuart?
I'm ready to dive in some.
You ready to dive
history.
into some history, Becca?
Oh, yeah. I'm so ready.
You're very excited for some
Cue the
history.
ding. Thank you. All right, go on.
But okay, so we'll start by just contextualizing where Travolta's at right now. He's pretty much like down in the dumps.
Very much in the dumps.
No
Well,
one.
why do you assume he's like depressed because he's doing shitty
Well,
things?
I don't mean he's depressed, but I mean he's in the dumps of Hollywood. Like no one wants to
Excuse
work
me.
with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
His only movies are like direct-to-video TV movies.
Yeah.
And the Look Who's Talking trilogy.
He's had a really
Ooh,
hard
okay.
80s.
Maybe that is
a
rough.
really hard 80s.
He's considered washed up.
And he commits
He commits,
to almost every movie he's in. He commits.
but everyone's like he's considered toxic for a movie. If he's a part of it, like no one wants to work with him.
Oh my god.
Or no one wants to work in the movie because they're like, oh, it's going to be a flop.
Yeah, because it's John Travolta.
He was the only actor in this movie who the Weinsteins attempted to block from being in the movie.
Yeah.
So he's like nowhere.
I mean, that's not the first thing Harvey Weinstein's been wrong about.
Not the first and certainly not the last.
Oh, man.
But he's still like he has some fans, such as Mr. Quentin Tarantino, who kind of relish in like the beginnings of his career. What we talked about, where like he was really a powerhouse in the new Hollywood movement with like Saturday Night Fever, Urban Cowboy, Carrie, all those movies, up to
And
Blowout.
Blowout.
All those movies that showed real promise for his career that never took off afterward.
Yeah.
And he's always looking for that project that's going to give him that like energy and like power he had back then, and he's struggling to find it.
Yeah.
In comes Quentin Tarantino, who had just popped off with his first movie, Reservoir Dogs. And during the press tour for that, he signed a deal with Danny DeVito's production company, Jersey Films, a $1 million deal to develop a new movie that they would then sell to a distributor. So he has that money, and he decides he wants to go back to an idea he had originally before Reservoir Dogs, where he would intertwine 3 different like crime stories in LA. So he and his writing partner at the time, Roger Avery, who he started out working at a video store with, decided to dust off this idea.
There it is.
So they dust off the idea and they hunker down in Amsterdam to write the script. Tarantino wrote the first and third parts, which are like Marcellus Wallace and his wife, and then the Bonnie situation at the end. Mm-hmm. Whereas Avery wrote the middle part, which is the Bruce Willis part, which was called Pandemonium Reigns, its original conception. There's a lot of drama between the two of them, because Tarantino claims he rewrote the middle part, and Avery does not get credit on the final movie, except for story by. But he wanted screenplay credit, which he did not get, and it's a source of contention between them to this day. So, yeah. They hunkered down. They wrote this script.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still reflecting on that. It's kind of when you discover Steve Jobs is an asshole. I mean, I think we
Yes.
kind of all knew that Tarantino has a little bit of a sassafras to him.
Tarantino is a guy who has an ego, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
He's very eager
and
to say the N-word.
And
So true.
an exemplification of
The
that.
N-word that, not just that he's acting and performing, but that he also wrote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an exemplification of this is that when he finished writing the script, he wrote on the front, May 1993 last draft. indicating he would not change the script for any executive or producer. Like, what he had written is what's getting shot, take it or leave it, or you don't make my movie. And it worked out for him because he was so hot after Reservoir Dogs.
After one movie.
Wow.
Damn.
Reservoir Dogs made a lot of waves.
An arguably okay movie.
That's a great movie.
It's okay.
Reservoir Dogs are pretty good.
It's okay.
I do like Steve Buscemi, who shows up as
A waiter.
Buddy Holly
Buddy
for like
Holly.
30 seconds.
best celebrity cameo. Changed my mind.
Yeah, his idea for this movie was taking really like pastiche, like standard archetypal stories and then having them confronted with real life, which is all three of these, like, you know, a guy has to go out with the big man's wife, a guy has to try and like escape the mob after he throws a fight, etc., etc. And but then confronting them with like real life situations, such as like, you know, the heroin overdose in the first one, or the guy wanting his watch back in the second, plus like the rape store.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting what the actual store was.
Zed's. That was probably the first time I watched Pulp Fiction. I was only 9 years old.
Oh my!
Oh no!
This was one of
And-
the movies that my parents shielded me from. This and then the Ten Commandments. I do not know why.
This one I watched with the babysitter who had no
Idea what it was.
Like, who
Yeah.
had no strict boundaries when it came to what I was allowed to watch on TV. Hence the reason why I watched the Tim Curry It, the 1990 TV movie, when I was like 9 or 10, and I also watched Pulp Fiction and did not know anything about that movie whatsoever. All I knew was that there was a very scary man in a black leather costume chained by the neck, and I had nightmares about that for probably that was 9 years old, 24 years.
Oh man! Of all things to kind of pull out of this movie and take with you.
The Gimp.
The Gimp.
But after he'd finished the script, he went back to TriStar, who had expressed interest in the movie through his Jersey Films deal. He gave them the script. They said, "This is too demented. We're not going to make this movie." Who gets the script the next day? But noted demented man Harvey Weinstein
Oh,
reads the script
God.
in under an hour and says, "Make the deal now." They get the movie the next day. It became the first movie that Miramax had fully funded. This was shortly after they were
wow.
purchased by Disney.
Wow.
So Disney made this movie, which is very funny.
Well, Disney makes a lot of movies under the guise of Miramax,
Yeah.
and that, you know, their rated R aspect, but there's no Disney logoing present.
And then shortly after they made the deal, the Weinsteins sold the international rights to this movie for $11, or for $11 million.
Oh, I was gonna say what?
It was shot for $8 million, so they'd actually made their budget back before they even started shooting.
Oh wow!
Originally, Tarantino wanted the role of Vincent Vega to go to Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs, who had played Vic Vega in that movie,
Yeah.
who was going to be the brother of Vince Vega. He turned it down to be in a Kevin Costner movie, and the role immediately went to Travolta as the second pick. The Weinsteins tried to fight this and tried to suggest Daniel Day-Lewis for the role.
Daniel
Hello?
Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. Tarantino stayed adamant it's Travolta or bust, or we make the movie somewhere else. Wow. The Weinsteins relented, let him use Travolta, and the rest is literally history.
So, question, Jeff.
Yes.
Connoisseur of Pulp Fiction history.
Yes.
What was John Travolta's like input in being approached with the role? Like, was it something that you got a knock on the door? Want you to be in
Well-
this movie? Yes, I'm in.
Quite literally, it was a knock on the door. Except it was Tarantino invited Travolta over to his house. Travolta came, he knocked on the door. He walked in and he said when he saw Tarantino's apartment, he was convinced this was a good idea.
Oh my gosh!
Because he said his apartment reminded him of the apartment he was in when he was making movies like Saturday Night Fever. He said, like, it's just like, you know, a basic run me down, but you can see there's real passion in it. And this guy has the same, like, drive that I had back in those days. And he's going to make a good movie out of this.
I don't
I'm trying to
believe that.
picture what that apartment looks like.
I don't believe it because John Travolta says about fucking every movie he does. He said we went to the premiere of Look Who's Talking and
Yeah.
thought this is going to be a hit.
And it was the biggest movie of his career.
Okay, but
Look
it
who's
wasn't.
talking.
Yeah.
It wasn't a critical hit though.
It got pretty good reviews. The first one.
I can't.
It's like a 55. It's like a 55% of Rotten Tomatoes.
He did have one, quarrel with this movie, though, that he was worried about. Travolta says that 3 times I had set trends, which he helped like relaunch disco, urban cowboy chic, and greaser aesthetics back in the 70s. He was worried that his performance in this would spawn a battalion of heroin-addicted hitmen.
What?
He said, I never played a drug addict on screen. Do I really need to shoot up and kill people?
Honestly, that's the level of confidence I want to walk into. Be
Yes.
like, people are going to love me so much that they're going to start murdering each other.
And shooting up heroin.
Yeah.
He was very convinced that it was a good move for his career, but he wasn't sure if it was a good move for him personally. It was finally when his wife, Kelly Preston, co-star of The Experts, told him, you need to do this, that Travolta said, I'm going to do this movie. He went through some fights with the Weinsteins, but eventually they committed and letting him make the movie. Harvey Weinstein is later quoted as saying, I'm so glad I had the idea to cast John Travolta.
Oh my God.
What a lovely man.
Yeah, put this man in prison.
Wish him well.
I have some more stuff about Travolta's design in this movie. He had a lot of input into his look, but I'll get into that when we start talking about the actual
That's
movie.
one of the first things I write down is, I think I'll mention it when we bring it up, but
Are we gonna
I have
are
opinions.
we gonna pull up the report?
Oh, we're bringing up the report.
Are we doing it right now?
No, we'll do it when we start talking about
Okay.
the plot.
Cool. Okay.
Because there's a little more about the making of this movie that is important to contextualize where we're at.
Yeah.
This movie was made for $8 million, which
Yeah.
is inconceivable nowadays with all these
7 million
actors.
went towards the hair.
Here's the thing. They came up. This was during like the heyday of indie cinema.
Yeah.
And at this point, big actors didn't really do indie. It was like you would get character actors for indies or up and comers. Big actors didn't do indies like they do nowadays. Because nowadays an indie is like a $30 million movie. Back
Yeah.
then it was like a $4 million movie. Because Hollywood is broken nowadays. But Travolta, all the actors for this movie got paid the exact same amount in order to prevent like any agent jockeying where they would try and like fight for bigger paychecks. The agreement was everyone gets paid the exact same amount.
Except for Bruce Willis, though.
Except for Bruce Willis.
Yeah. Because Bruce Willis was still
the
like
biggest star in this movie.
Yeah, he was coming off the coattails of
Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 2, and like he was already like he was pretty well desired at that point in time.
But Travolta and the rest of the cast got paid $20,000 a week.
Okay.
Travolta made a total of $140,000 on this movie, which after he made millions in the 80s, major shift for him. This was a movie he did very much because he thought it was a good choice for his career.
Yeah.
Which we talked about a lot in the beginnings era, that Travolta's an actor who he needed to like check the ego at the door and be willing to take a good role that isn't as sexy
Yeah.
to get his career back on track. And this is when he finally makes that choice. This role is not sexy monetarily wise, nor is he particularly a great looking guy in this movie.
I don't know, man. When we get into the hair ranking,
It's gonna be spicy.
it's gonna be a bit spicy when we get into it. So.
But they were, even though this movie was shot for very cheap, they wanted to make it look expensive, which they did by building the Jackrabbit Slim set. That's all one big set. The rest of the movie shot on location, but that is a set. And
What's that?
The Jackrabbit Slim, the 50s diner.
Oh.
that was a big set that was built
Oh.
in a Culver City warehouse.
Yeah.
Okay, because I wrote in my notes, I'm like, there's no way this is a real place. This
Yes.
came out of Tarantino's brain. Like, I was born in the wrong era level of, I need this to be made.
He vomited in that building, just emerged.
Yeah, essentially. Okay.
Pretty much.
But to make it look more expensive, and this is something I need to ask Becca about, is they shot it on the slowest film Kodak made, which resulted in them having to use massive lights because it was like very low exposure film. So they'd use massive lights in order to light the scene, which is why everyone looks sweaty in this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, that's actually a Robert Richardson move as well. I mean, Robert Richardson likes to shoot at very closed down stops to maximize depth of field. And so, especially, you can see it in Django Unchained, like the initial scene between like Christoph Waltz and the Jewish farmer. There's like a beam, like a pool of light hitting the table and illuminating them, and it's so hot that it literally lights the room. And that's like a Robert Richardson move. But even knowing, because I didn't know that until you had mentioned it before we started the episode, I was just like, wow, because like the low exposure film is a better quality. Like it's a lower ASA.
It's cleaner.
It's
Not a
cleaner.
lot of grain.
But it definitely, on the flip side, that means you have to use very large sources. And it actually informs a lot of my negative thoughts about the cinematography in this movie.
Which, by the way, we should fill in context. Becca, what do you do for a living?
Oh, well, Stuart, I am
She's
a
not-
cinematographer. Well, I work in camera, but yeah, cinematography is a passion.
Yes. Becca's a full-time camera person. She's cooler than either of us in
Yeah.
what she does.
I mean, I don't know. I just found out Stuart works with a very, very good heartthrob.
Whoa, wait a
of an
second.
actor.
We're not gonna
Wait
say
a
a name. We're not gonna
second.
say a
We
name.
can't
No, I
say
know.
names.
I know. That's all I was going to say is that I was very jealous of you.
But
Still am
Becca
jealous.
is in the union.
Sure am.
So that
Camera
means you're
union.
official. That means, yeah.
For the listener at home who does not work in the film industry, the fun thing about unions in our industry is that for any of the other unions, you need to work 600 hours and have a job, which is pretty straightforward. For our Stuart and I's union,
For the DGA,
The
because
Directors
Becca's
Guild
yours
of
is
America.
Local 6.
Local 600.
Local 600, which is for cinematographers and electrics, grips, camera.
Electrics, no.
Electrics, no? What's
Electrics and grips are completely different. They're a different
they're
union.
476.
476?
476 in Chicago. They're split up. Local 600 is an international union for camera.
And that's for camera. Yeah.
Yep. Set photographers, utilities, first, second ACs, operators, and
Yeah.
DPs.
For Jeff and I, who want to
Yeah.
be assistant
Yeah,
directors.
because the guild we want to get into is the same one that Quentin Tarantino is a part of.
Yeah.
As a result, it's fairly selective. We have to work 600 days.
It's 600 days.
Which is,
Yeah.
if we worked straight for 2 years, we would do it. Like no weekends or anything.
Yeah.
But unions in this industry are very interesting.
They're built on exclusivity. I'll say
Yes,
it.
they're
I'll
built on
say it.
exclusivity.
They're built on exclusivity and
For reasons.
nepotism and all that other
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, there's that. There's,
For
yeah,
for
it's
DGA,
political.
being a director, because there are ways you can get into the DGA to be a feature director that don't involve the days worked. Because for getting into the DGA as an assistant director, that is more reliant on getting your days, whereas being a commercial or feature director, as long as you are associated with a production, or as long as the production that you were hired on to direct is associated with the DGA, that gets you in the DGA. So there's no days you have to work and all that stuff for being a feature film DGA director.
Yeah. I mean, we can make a whole other podcast about the politics and,
Yeah.
and
Oh my God,
potential
yeah.
nepotism of
Of
the
the-
unions, but how much good they do as well. I will advocate for that.
Yeah,
hands down.
absolutely.
But,
We
we're
want to
talking
get into
about
them because of how
Tarantino.
good they are. But yeah.
Back to Tarantino.
Yeah.
Back to Tarantino.
But one of the Travolta was Tarantino was very happy with his Travolta pick for this movie, and he actually pretty much credits Travolta with setting the tone of this movie.
Yeah.
Because he says he does not realize he was making a comedy until Travolta came on and started doing his thing in this movie, and that's when he's like, "Oh wait, this movie's funny as hell," which I think it is extremely funny. This is such a good comedy.
It's a dark comedy.
Yes, it's a very dark comedy, and he very much credits Travolta with kind of setting that tone.
Yeah.
Because he just written a bunch of tough guys doing things, and then Travolta's like, "What if the tough guys were all dumb?"
True.
All the
No.
tough good guys are
Yes.
dumb because there's a bunch of bad tough guys that are dumb.
Yes,
But if the good guys who we're supposed to be rooting for
Are
are
dumb.
dumb.
and I think that's something that is very much misread when it comes to Tarantino's movies. Is he gets a lot of flack sometimes for just doing cool guy movies. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important in telling that in almost all of his movies, the guys are dumb, incompetent, or evil. In this movie, all the white dudes are incompetent and evil and dumb. And the only characters with brains in them are almost always the women and the people of color in his movies.
What about Christoph Waltz's character in Django Unchained?
I think there's a reason he dies 2/3 of the way through the movie.
2/3.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say 90%.
There's a little bit left in. There's the whole bit with the Australians, and
Oh gosh.
then he has to come back and fight Walton
Yeah,
Goggins.
Jeff and I have discussed this before about how I was disappointed that Christoph Waltz's character was killed off so early in Django Unchained, when really he was set up to be a white savior character.
Yeah.
But then it's Django's movie. It's his story, and so by killing him very unceremoniously, it lends itself to lessen that white savior.
a lot of I feel like most of Tarantino's movies are in some way almost a deconstruction of masculinity, and he's just trying to get to, and he's trying to portray it in a negative light almost always, or if it's in a positive light, it's in like a brotherly, like intimate way that you don't often see in cinema, male intimacy.
Yeah.
Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's just about two guys who are really good friends. They're both idiots, but they're good friends and they're happy about it. Django Unchained, the white savior character is wiped out. Jackie Brown, Robert De Niro, pretty much like the pinnacle of masculinity in that time. In every role he played was always like the tough guy against the system. He plays like a total idiot, druggie, who's the bad guy of that movie. Almost all of Tarantino's movies are deconstructing masculinity and putting women and people of color in the forefront. And yes, but here's the thing. I'm going to turn it around. I think the problem is he the guy who should be telling these stories?
Oh,
That's the question. I think people are always trying
sleeves
to.
up for this one.
People are always trying to ask. Are always asking the question. Tarantino's movies are the. Do they discredit like non-white guys? And I think the credit is no. I think he's trying to be a really woke filmmaker, and I don't know if he's the correct voice for that.
He's definitely not the correct voice. I have
I think that's the
many
question.
things about what he does.
I do want to say, this is getting a little bit outside the context of this episode, but into our next episode, he did recommend Travolta for his
And he
next
produced that movie.
and he produced that.
Did he really?
Yes.
His production company did. I don't know if he had like direct involvement.
And that
but
movie is the pinnacle of the 90s colorblindness, and we will talk about that next week.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that next week.
And I will not be here because I refuse. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much the story of how this movie got made.
That took 30 minutes.
Yeah, we got off topic a few times, but that's the story of how this movie got made. It was a passion project for all involved. Travolta, Tarantino, all the like, Sam Jackson. They finally got this movie made. They went into production, and it changed cinema. And now let's talk about the movie.
Let's talk about
Pulp Fiction.
the movie.
Um,
I just put music there. So
did you?
Well, you won't know.
Oh, I guess I'll. Yeah. So
I was gonna start singing "Wipeout," but it's actually just like "Wipeout." That's it.
So Stuart, if you want to kind of lead us in the conversation of the plot.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, it starts off with the definition of pulp.
Yes, it literally gives us two definitions of
Two
the
definitions
word
of pulp, which I
an amorphous matter without shape or form, which is basically what this movie is. It's amorphous with no point.
Yeah, and then it has a second definition, which is
Classic like stories, traditionally printed on like poor quality paper, which is why it was called pulp.
Well,
Yeah.
it was also promiscuous material.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah, promiscuous or like raw or like violent.
Like a centerfold.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
It's like the opening scene of Rubber. Have you guys seen Rubber?
I've
No.
not seen Rubber.
The Rubber is a movie about a sentient tire that rolls around the desert and with its telekinetic powers makes people's heads explode.
Hell yeah.
As one does.
Look this up on IMDb, kids. It's a real movie that exists. I'm sure you can watch it on Netflix or whatever. The opening scene of that movie is the side character who plays a sheriff who's investigating these heads exploding murders. And he like breaks the fourth wall and talks to the audience and says, "Nothing you see will matter." Movie begins. And I watched this pulp definition of like the amorphous blob with no form or shape. And I'm like, okay.
It's telling you exactly what it's like in Tenet at the beginning when a character says, "Don't try and understand it, just feel it."
Yeah. Okay.
They're
How'd that work out?
they're
How'd that work out for Tenet though?
It worked out a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I felt it and it was okay.
and then we open on this breakfast bar.
Yes.
Coffee shop diner.
With
Wow.
Tim Roth and
Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer.
Amanda Plummer.
Pumpkin and
Honey Bunny.
Honey Bunny.
I read that Honey Bunny was actually the name of Tarantino's typist. Her pet, I forget. I think her pet rabbit.
So the typist wasn't called Honey Bunny.
No, her rabbit was called Honey
Gotcha.
Bunny, and
Thank you for
and it
clarifying.
died during production of this movie. So he named the character Honey Bunny as a homage to her rabbit.
He probably just wanted her to work an extra week and said, "Hey, I'll name a character Honey Bunny for your fucking dead rabbit. Now get back to work and write me another draft."
We need more feet.
Because they said that she said that Tarantino is functionally illiterate, and just would hand her notebooks where he scribbled things indecipherably, and she would type up what he had written and grammar, make it correct grammar.
Oh my.
Wow.
Which is an interesting way to write a movie.
It is.
I do kind of picture Quentin Tarantino. I mean, he's smart, but I do kind of feel like he's a little brutish.
Yeah.
And it's probably something that's just like he's a misguided brute.
Yes.
Misunderstood, possibly misguided brute.
A little misguided, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Yeah.
super tall.
Man, we start with Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer in this breakfast restaurant.
bar.
And they're just talking about, he's like, Tim Roth's just saying, the thing is, they rob a bank. And the security's all over the place. They rob liquor stores, gun stores. No one ever robs a restaurant.
People are expecting you to rob a bank. People are expecting you to rob a gas station.
They're not expecting you to rob a restaurant. You get the stuff in the diner, you go around and get everyone's wallets. That's where you make the real money.
Manager doesn't give a fuck. He just wants you to leave.
These are the worst accents we've ever done on the show.
I'm just kind of watching this happen.
But this opening scene to me very much establishes that pulp. It establishes the randomness of this movie.
That they're two robbers, and they've established that they're robbers by talking about what they're about to do.
And they're just sitting around talking about
Their
this
plan.
robbery they're going to do.
Yeah, and then they begin the robbery.
Yes. Cut to guitars.
Guitars.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Copyrighted
awesome
music.
title sequence.
Yes.
I mean, Tarantino always kills his title sequences, but this one in particular was just so much fun.
It's so cool.
yeah,
Tarantino. Start the ding early.
Yeah.
But I have a screenwriter friend who says that the way Quentin Tarantino writes is that he writes his headings, and then below that in parentheses it's like song reference, and he puts a song reference for how the scene should be played out. And so like Quentin Tarantino's use of copyrighted music is something that, because you always think as like indie filmmakers you have to like get a composer, and you can't use like copyrighted song. If you want to use something that's somewhat of a style-esque, like an 80s song or a 90s song or a current top 40 song, you have to have like a knockoff copyright-free version. But Tarantino's like consistent needed use for copyrighted music is something that I think lends so much to like the feeling and vibe.
Yeah, he very rarely uses score in his movies.
Could Once Upon a Time
Yeah.
work with a score and not a soundtrack?
Probably not as well. It's he uses the music in his movies to set the mood and the tone.
100%.
Yes.
yeah, but that definitely sets Hateful Eight apart.
Yes,
And that
it
he got
does.
Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, Ennio Morricone kills that title sequence, and it's unlike any other Tarantino film.
Tarantino had, to my knowledge, tried to get Ennio Morricone to score one of his movies for like 10 years or something like that. He kept saying no, and then he finally did it for Hateful Eight,
Yeah,
which is very funny.
Yeah. So, title sequence,
Travolta, top build.
top build.
In spite of not being the biggest star in this movie, he gets the top bill because this is a redemption project for him from Tarantino, and he wants Travolta to get that credit.
All because he
Get that
watched Blowout.
All because he watched Blowout.
Yeah.
And I would say this movie is very reminiscent of his performance in Blowout. Not in terms of the character he's playing, but in the intensity he's bringing to it. No,
I don't know. His character's the least intense person on screen.
Yes, I would agree. Because I think Sam Jackson has more powerhouse moments.
Yes.
I would say Travolta's is the most consistently throughout his pieces nuanced and like deep. But like in terms of moments where you're like leaning in the back of your seat, like, holy fuck, it's Sam Jackson, Bruce Willis in some moments. And yeah,
Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman. For
I
sure.
more so meant, my apologies. I more so meant in terms of how like Travolta's not an actor who I necessarily associate with doing a lot of like bits for the characters. Like he's an actor who just like plays the scene.
Yeah.
It's only in like his really great performances where he like envelops this whole character
Fair
into
enough,
himself.
Yeah.
And I feel like between this, Blowout, Saturday Night Fever, those are the movies where you really like. It doesn't feel like John Travolta playing this character. It feels like this character.
And
Yeah.
you said he had a lot of word in how he was going to look.
Yes. So Tarantino picked like the outfits they wore, which were the the suits and ties and whatnot. Travolta was very adamant that he designed the hair. He called it the Euro haircut. He says it's sometimes Euro trash and sometimes elegant.
Wait. We got to start the soundtrack while we get into this whole thing. Okay, so cue the hair ranking. Okay, welcome to the hair ranking.
Tarantino did not want to do that hair. Travolta said, "Please just take a look at me in it." He did the test, and Tarantino thought it was so funny, so he let him keep it for this movie, where he has the mullet with like the little like
Strands.
dread almost like hanging down the front. He also developed his character's way of speaking in this movie, in which he thought it would just be funny to like overemphasize everything with his lips and his teeth. And he said he rehearsed this with the line "Royale with cheese," and the way he says in the movie is like "Royale with cheese."
I was gonna say towards the end of the movie, and I'm trying to think about when he puts on like a southern accent after shooting Martin in the face.
This is something that Travolta does a lot. We've noticed where he like, even though he's from Jersey, he like does a southern accent a lot.
Every so
Marvin.
often.
You think God came down?
But in terms of his hair, like this is the note I wrote: hair, no; earring, no; both. And I said maybe. Crossed it out after a while and said definitely not. So that was my feelings on the matter.
Well, in my perspective,
Yeah.
when it comes to the hair ranking report of John Travolta's hair in Pulp Fiction 1994, I gotta say, like, it gave me the most life in 14 years.
Most life.
Because let's rewind the clock. Before,
That was
like,
the clock rewinding.
it's 1980. He had done Blowout.
Yes.
He's gonna do Staying Alive.
Yes.
Nothing much after that.
Yes.
Everything after that is all just like the same dumb, like adult dad Travolta hair.
Except for the experts, which
which
is a crime against humanity.
and
It violates the Geneva Conventions.
we won't talk about the expert's hair.
The experts is currently locked up in Guantanamo Bay.
But Pulp Fiction hair, like when we cut from the title sequence to Travolta and Jackson driving in the car, and you first see Travolta in his hair, you can't help but like, who is that?
It's a
He
choice.
really transforms into a character
It's
in this
not
movie.
Travolta. It is a different person.
Yeah.
It's Vincent
And
Vega.
so here is my criteria. While not exactly stylish, like, or cool, like Staying Alive or Carrie, how it lends to the story, how it lends to the character, bumps it up a few notches for me.
Wait, how far?
Okay, let me see the ranking.
I got it right. I got it right
Let me
here.
see the ranking. Let me see this shit. Okay. Put it.
It's about to be spicy. The audience is loving this silence right now as you stare at this list.
Well, so just to reiterate to the audience, it's Staying Alive, Carrie, Grease, Saturday Night Fever, Shout. That's my top 5. Then I think it's going to go in the top 5.
Ooh.
All right.
I think it's going to bump Shout to number 6. It's going
Ooh.
right below Saturday Night
Right below
Fever.
Saturday Night Fever.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can. Yeah.
Because of the story element of it, not particularly because of like, oh, that's hot hair, because that's not hot hair.
Crap, I thought this was like a super superficial list here. Going based surely on looks, like purely on looks.
Most of the time it
Stuart's
is.
a connoisseur.
I am a connoisseur of John Travolta's hair, and I got to
just
give
think
the
this-
audience what they need.
Yeah, this hair is such a choice, and it's not a choice where it's like it's so bad like Battlefield Earth, like dreadlocks on a white man.
Yeah.
Like that's a choice, but this is like a choice. Like it's a
Choice.
And
choice.
the second you see...
Underline, not bold. Underline.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's underlined and not bold, not italicized,
Very good.
not highlighted,
Yeah.
not strike through, underlined.
Underline.
And like the second you see like kind of oafish looking Travolta wearing that hair in that opening scene, you understand immediately who this guy is.
100%.
You're like, this is some like doofus ass hitman who totally just like has no idea what he's doing. He just does the work because he's like, this is cool and I feel cool doing it.
This is a guy who, if we accidentally shot a guy in the back of the trunk, I wouldn't want to clean it up with anybody else.
Yes.
And that's why it's number 5.
Yes.
That's the hair ranking report.
Congrats, Vincent Vega.
But this opening scene of them in the car, it's what Tarantino's known for. It's just guys just talking about things that don't seem important but inform character.
Which is what a lot of film school people like to do in their movies.
Yeah, except-
is talking about nothing.
Except they don't understand how to do it right, and it just literally is about nothing. It's boring as hell.
Yeah.
the scene, he knows how to write it so it's engaging, and the actors know how to play it so it informs the characters that they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's even, I wrote down a line that I thought was really funny is after they go through the whole, like, Royale with cheese thing, Sam Jackson's just like, all right, but what do they call a Whopper in France? And Charles is like, I didn't go into BK. I didn't go in Burger King. It's like, it's almost like he's got some beef with Burger King.
Like
Travolta
our
has this,
fucking beef with White Castle.
Travolta has this, like, hidden beef with Burger King. He's like, no, I only went to McDonald's. Why would I go to Burger King in Amsterdam or wherever he was?
Well,
He was in Paris.
Paris, yes.
Yeah.
fuck White Castle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know the
It's-
chain that
I've been
wasn't
holding-
mentioned?
I've been
White
holding it
Castle.
in, and I haven't really done a bit on it in a while. So I just have to reiterate for our audience in the second era, episode number 1, and we're not going to call it. Are we going to call this season 2? Are we going to
No,
keep it on
it's
season
the same. It's the same season.
Same
it's
season, just a different era. Okay, season 1, episode 22, first episode in the second era. Fuck White Castle.
Yes,
Let's just make
it's
sure.
important.
Let's make sure it's consistent here. Let's make sure it's consistent.
But the whole scene's really great. And then they finally get to where they're going because they talk about they're going to like pick their hitmen for a gangster called Marcellus Wallace.
Yes.
And they're picking up a briefcase that some like drug dealers had ripped off of him.
Yeah.
So they mosey into this apartment building. We get this very cool long shot where it's just them just kind of walking around a hallway of the apartment building, discussing foot massages.
Yeah, and he's like, "Would you give a man a foot massage?"
Yeah.
Well, and this was
you.
this was the story where like he's talking about Marcellus Wallace's wife Mia, who's played by Uma Thurman, and he's like, "Yeah, like well, you know, this guy Tony or whatever got thrown off Antoine got thrown off our roof." He's like, "What he got thrown off a roof for?" It's like he gave Mia a foot massage, and this sort of lays down the track of like Travolta's future scene with
Yeah.
Mia in the diner, that where it's like, "Oh shit!" Like he's can't make. You can't make a mistake here, or else, God forbid,
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
And the Antoine story is also important because throughout the movie we get 3 different versions of that story.
Yeah. Right.
And so it just kind of informs like the pointlessness of this whole thing. There's like no direct truth to it.
Right.
It's just a movie about nothing, just this story. No one knows what the hell the point of it is.
Right.
One of
And
those,
I was going to say, because later on, I'll kind of mention how I think some of the dialogue here is too verbose for the characters it's embodying. And it's kind of my problem with Tarantino for a while that I think he definitely doesn't like slide into until his like later years in directing, when he kind of has like 2 forms of dialogue. The ones that are like the Christoph Waltz's, or like later on when Vincent Vega's looking at himself in the mirror, he's kind of like, I don't know, he's just using this verbose language that just doesn't feel like his character. But then he, you know, earlier he was talking about Royale with cheese.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't go to Burger King. You know, like those 2 things are disconnected. Whereas the dialogue that we're talking about right now in the hallway feels very natural, feels very like in character. But then after a while in this movie, it kind of breaks it a little bit for the sake of having that like goofy, out of character dialogue for no
Yeah.
reason. And I'll reflect on that a little bit.
I think that the thing about this movie for me is that the first 70 minutes of it are like electrifying as all hell.
Yeah.
Like I would say the first 70 minutes of this movie are near perfection. I think it falls off a little in the second half. And I don't think necessarily like it's bad. I think it's just good.
Pretty
Instead
much
of-
right after he shoots all the guys in the apartment, we see Bruce Willis and Marcellus, and then the diner scene, and then pretty much after her OD,
Yeah, I think once we start the Bruce Willis story, the Gold Watch, that's when
Yeah.
this movie gets a little slow.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that.
yeah.
I think the Bruce Willis scene goes on for a little too long. It's not as engaging as the rest of the movie.
It's even more pointless than what many of the other story
Yes.
arcs had been.
But
I almost forget that he's like a boxer.
Yeah.
Actually.
and it doesn't
Right.
it doesn't
There's that
have
whole
the
thing.
energy the rest of the like the first 7 minutes of the movie have such an energy and electricity to them. Like you just feel yourself being pulled along with this movie. You're like, oh, this is exciting.
And you know, after he gets the gold watch, when do we hear about it at the rest of the storyline?
we do not.
Like never. So the whole beginning part of that Bruce Willis storyline, where it's all this emphasis on this watch, and then the second half of it is Zed's whole rapey store thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stakes with the watch. There's nothing to do with like, oh, we lost the watch again. It's got to get it back. Like it
Yeah.
totally switches into like a survival. Holy fuck, I'm about to get raped.
that is the intention of it, though. Is that's a pulp story faced with reality.
Yeah.
Which is the idea. And I agree that I think it drags a lot.
My only disagreement is with the Mia Vincent arc, which that has a consistent full
Yes.
arc, which is Vincent can't fuck up the date in a good or bad way. He fucks up in a bad way, meaning he doesn't show Mia a good time. He gets fucked up by Marcellus. He just fucks up the date in a good way with Mia. He gets fucked up by Marcellus.
Yeah.
So it has a consistent through line with twists and turns that relate to that consistent arc where it pays off at the end.
That section is just so good.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll quickly wrap up. They go into the apartment and they get the briefcase.
We got to bounce back and forth too.
There's been like 100,000 different interpretations and analyzing about that scene that like there's
Yeah, people have talked about that scene a lot.
Yeah.
I don't
we
think
all
there's anything
know
we can add
it's
to this conversation.
insanely good. It's so funny. It's like, especially like, I wish I hadn't seen that film. I think a lot of people know that Sam Jackson and John Travolta play hitmen. When they're discussing cheeseburgers, they are about to go kill some folks.
Yes.
So like the whole like, you know, oh, they're just having this casual conversation and then bam, all hell breaks loose. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't know this was going to happen. Like, you know, I think that whole mysticism behind that scene is kind of pulled away considering just how big this film is. But it doesn't make that scene any less
Exciting.
yeah.
Well, that first trunk shot when they
Yeah.
are getting their guns, and he's like, "We should have brought some shotguns." And he's like, "How many guys are up there?" It's like 3, 4, including our target. I don't know. So there could be 5 or more up there. Should have brought shotguns.
Yeah.
So it's like this is after they had just got done with the Royale with cheese
Yeah.
conversation. So it's like you kind of know already.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're hitmen. They're like
They're discussing
go.
burgers and shotguns in the same like.
Yeah.
And it's a Tarantino
they have this
special.
equally as
Yeah.
much importance to them.
Yeah.
And the one thing I did write in my notes is, you know, that emoji that's like the 2 eyes and the mouth in between,
Yeah.
and it's like a gaping. And I just put neighbors.
Neighbors.
When Sam Jackson is just like going into him,
Just screaming.
that is a tasty burger. That the neighbors are just like, what is going on?
And they hear a bunch of gunshots.
I want the Pulp Fiction sequel where it's just the neighbors listening in on this conversation, and then somebody in the
Just the observers.
the restaurant watching everything go down.
Yeah.
And then someone outside of the rape store seeing him, like Kathy Griffin almost get shot.
Yeah. Kathy Griffin is in this movie for one shot. It's very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they get the briefcase, they open it up, there's light inside.
It's gold.
People are always like, oh, it's probably, people think it's like Marcellus Wallace's soul. There's like
my.
there's a lot of very weird discussion. Everyone involved in the movie is like, no, it's just a MacGuffin. It's just there.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson was asked what's in the briefcase, and he said it's 2 batteries and a light bulb. So the briefcase, everyone tries to ascribe importance to it. I think it's just there to give a point, and Tarantino thought it'd be funny if it shined light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's like the Maltese Falcon or the Ark of the Covenant or something. It's there to inform the story. It doesn't have an importance.
I do like your use of MacGuffin though. That's a
Yes.
word I've been trying to think about this entire
It's
podcast.
the best word.
It's MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin.
Yeah.
There's my favorite is at the bar at AMC's. It's called MacGuffin's Bar.
Oh,
Like at AMC's where they have
Theaters.
like a bar near to the snack bar. It's called MacGuffin's Bar
Wow.
because it's like it's an Irish name like a pub, but it's also what the MacGuffin in the movie.
is that the joke?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the joke.
I thought it was just a movie
That is the
reference.
joke.
Okay.
Ha!
yeah.
Jeff, very.
But yeah, they finish there, and then we cut to Bruce Willis, who's just sitting there, and we get this really this kind of just the static shot of his face, and I love how they do this shot.
I mean, seconds ago you were saying this is where the movie slumps.
I think the movie slumps during the Bruce Willis storyline.
Because this really
This is
isn't
Bruce
the Bruce Willis
Oh,
storyline.
okay.
This is
fair
like
enough.
right before the Mia and Vincent scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that Bruce Willis, his greatest skill as an actor is almost just how like blank of a void his face is. That it works as like this Kuleshov effect, which is the effect of like if you put like a blank face next to any image, it tells a different story. And so I think Bruce Willis's face is so useful in this because he's just staring without moving his face or giving any expression. But based on what Marcellus Wallace is saying, whether he's saying a good thing or a bad thing, you can read a different expression on Bruce Willis's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Marcellus is like, you're washed up, and it looks like he's angry at him.
You're going to feel a sting. That's
Yeah.
pride. beat it down or something.
And he says, like, you're going to make a lot of money. And it looks like Bruce Willis is pleased, but he's not moving his face at all. It's just this really cool scene of Bruce Willis's skills, like almost like a doll you can put anything on.
Well, and to take that point even further, it's like when he offers him money and then Bruce Willis like reaches for it, but he like kind of taunts him with it a little bit. And to lean towards the character, he's like, I think, what would Marcellus say? He's like, you know you're my bitch, right?
Yeah.
And he just takes like, seems that way. He just puts it in his jacket pocket, like, and he doesn't give anything off, any more like facial expression, like he's not offended, he's not this. But it's when he's with Vincent Vega, and Vincent says like one thing to him, and his facial expression is all like,
he gets
what?
angry.
He gets angry. But when it's in front of Marcellus, he has to have like the stone cold like stare look.
I think that points to Marcellus. If anything, you know, rub your woman's feet, he throws you out a window.
Yeah.
Give him a side eye, he's gonna kill you.
Yeah.
And I think to finish off the Bruce Willis thing, I think it's very telling for him as an actor that his most iconic, like famous role in terms of quality is a role where he literally plays a ghost that doesn't know he's a ghost. Bruce Willis, like, he just plays blank emptiness very well.
Not Die Hard?
I think Die Hard is his most iconic.
Fifth Element?
I would say The
This
Sixth
is Fifth
Sense.
Element Erasure, and I will not stand for it.
The Sixth Sense is probably his most like well-respected performance in terms of a good movie. He almost got nominated for an Oscar for that.
Keyword almost.
Yes.
Not Unbreakable?
And even in Unbreakable, he's playing the same, like he's playing a guy with like trying to discover who feels empty inside until he finds a point at the end of the movie.
Looper?
He's playing
Looper.
a guy who's empty inside. Bruce Willis plays every good performance from Bruce Willis.
Why don't we let's do this.
Every good
Let's do
performance
this
from
right
Bruce
now.
Willis is he's playing a guy who's empty inside,
I'm going to challenge
and the
this.
movie is placing.
I was really about to throw one at you about Over the Hedge, but actually he's in the raccoon is like pulling everybody together to like form a plan, but he was just going to ditch everyone all along because he's really just lonely.
Because he doesn't have a home. He's trying to get his home back.
I think that's the plot of Over
there's
the
a
Hedge.
bear who's living.
G.I. Joe Retaliation.
I would not say that's one of his good performances. I said a good performance is not performances.
Good performance.
All right.
Moonrise Kingdom.
I have
snap,
not
he
seen
is
that in a
in
long
that.
time.
Yeah. I mean, everyone is stone-faced in a...
In a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I'm just saying Bruce Willis is an actor where you use his face and you have the emotions of the actors in the scene around them inform what you're reading his face at.
I mean, that would argue that the actors and story have to do all the heavy work for Bruce Willis.
Yes. They do the heavy
Is he
work.
cameo in Friends?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure he's in Friends.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, this like little Bruce Willis scene that I think is so good happens.
Oh, can I ask?
Yes.
What's the Band-Aid for?
Apparently that was just actually on what's his name's head at the time, and Tarantino liked how it looked.
I guess it really works considering we don't see his identity. He's like, oh, a character part of this is literally just the Band-Aid on the back of his head.
It's just it's just a signifying marker.
Okay.
It gives you something to look at, makes him a little more interesting. I do like that we never see Marcellus Wallace's face in this movie until it's like this really like
Demasculating
thing where he's walking around carrying like cupcakes or something.
Yeah.
He's carrying like a cake or like donuts or
I don't know.
something.
Yeah.
I think
That is fun.
that's a really good
And
detail.
Then he gets raped.
Yes.
Oh.
But yeah, Baby Mikey's in this movie from the Look Who's Talking trilogy.
Get the fuck
Bruce Willis,
out.
Baby Mikey.
There's the door. Don't you bring that shit in here. That's era 1 shit, man. Let's keep that in era 1. We're in era 2. Don't you bring that in here.
But yeah,
Come on.
shortly
Show the
after
man
that,
some
Travolta
respect.
and Sam Jackson walk in wearing shorts and t-shirts. No explanation how with the briefcase. It
See,
is
like,
a
if you're
really
watching
funny
this for the
cut.
first time, and Becca, this might be good for you. Like, and many people know about this before even going into the movie about the non-linear narrative.
Yeah.
So, like, because I watched this movie trying to think of it as like, if I was watching this for the first time, how would I interpret all these different story pieces? And I would say, spoiler alert, it's not until you get to Vincent Vega dying in the Bruce Willis story, then going into the coffee shop scene when it really hits home. Oh, it's nonlinear, because everything else, in theory, could be like, oh, this might be 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
or this might be a day later, or a month later, or a year later. Like the Vincent Vega Mia story arc scene. I think the one right after that is the Bruce Willis one, or am I
Yes.
wrong in saying
Yeah.
that? Yeah, and that's when they're at the boxing gym. Vincent's walking into one of the training rooms where he sees Mia, and Mia says, "Thanks for the good night, by the way." So far in the movie, it seems like everything could have happened in linear sequence until that bit where Vincent dies.
Which is pretty cool because my interpretation when they rolled up in different clothes was, oh,
It's just another gig.
well, no, I thought it had come right after they shut up the apartment and figured they got blood on their clothes, which isn't wrong. It was just a different death.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah,
But I'm like, shorts and t-shirt, like, oh, okay, it's just Tarantino being funny.
Like, it works as a good gag even without the non-linear.
Yeah.
But then once you get the understanding of it later, it's very funny to
Yeah.
see how it happened.
And I think that's just great writing. It doesn't necessarily serve like, oh, the story and the whole idea of the movie changes when you realize it's non-linear. No, it's honestly just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It lets the ending of this movie be like optimistic. Even though
you-
one of the
Oh,
even though you know
yeah.
one of the characters gets murdered.
That's
Yeah.
true. Oh, it does kind of change the ending.
The very
Right.
like the interesting thing about this movie to me is how it's non-linear, but it still follows like almost a 3-act structure.
Yeah.
In terms of these lead characters, like at the end, Jackson and Travolta kind of have like a redemption arc.
they make their peace that
Even though you know Travolta's still in the game and he gets murdered earlier in the movie.
yeah, but he's not with Jules.
Yeah, like it works as like a linear arc for
Yeah.
a non-linear story.
So maybe Jules like got out or something.
Jules gets out. There's a reading of this movie that Sam Jackson subscribes to where it's about redemption, and that Travolta's the only character who doesn't try and like, who just sticks with his game and doesn't try and like break free or do anything else or seek redemption, and that's why he's the one character who dies. That I think is very interesting. I don't know if I fully subscribe to it, but I think it's very interesting.
I'm holding up my finger to cue the ding, but I don't know if it's a ding-worthy thing yet.
The thing that's funny is that we're not taking a video right now, so you're going to have to just rely on intuition for these things.
I know.
Some of them are probably going to come up before we even, like, Stuart and I have been miming a little, like
Yeah.
little doorbell ding every time we think either Jeff or ourselves say something that's very film
Yes.
bro-esque, because this
Yeah.
movie tends itself. But
Yeah, this movie.
I mean, I even got a vape in my hand too, so it's like
oh my god,
I got all that going for
Oh
me too.
crap! I'm drinking a LaCroix.
Oh no! Oh god.
How did we do this to ourselves?
We did.
What's this? Quentin Tarantino is walking in the room right now.
Whoa!
Oh my god, is that Stanley Kubrick behind him?
Oh my god!
Oh my god, the whole gang is here.
Aronofsky. Wow.
Martin Scorsese is rappelling in from the ceiling. Oh my god, the whole team is here.
all this what you're saying
Hi,
while I look
guys,
behind you
there's
and I
pizza
see a.
there's pizza and beers in the next room.
You say all this.
Just
and I-
hang out, and I'll be out in a
Everyone's
minute
coming
of it.
to watch our screening of Holy Mountain.
Yeah,
You say all this, and then behind you was a Birdman or the Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance poster, Empire Strikes Back, and Rocky. That's all behind you right now that
Yeah.
I'm seeing.
Fine cinema.
Fine cinema.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Jack Nicholson.
Oh, shit.
Man, I didn't see you stand over.
Okay. Next scene.
Stuart, how you doing?
No, God, we're not going to do
no.
this.
How are
We're not
We're
going to
not
do this.
doing that.
I'm gonna go wait in the other room.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jack
Are
Nicholson.
you guys cool if I take a hit in here? Okay.
Go for
You
it.
got
cool,
you
you're
got a
cool.
beer.
It's already
over
humid
here.
enough in here, so I think it's a little bit
Okay.
of steam.
All right, I'm gonna get Jack into the other room, and then we can. Get back to
Oh,
this.
you know, I wrote down. It said I wrote down.
Is this the
Why is there
bathroom over
smooth jam?
here? Yeah, Jack, that's the bathroom right there.
Oh my God!
Thanks, God.
I'm trying to have a
Thanks,
discussion
guys.
here.
Hey,
The only woman in this podcast right now is getting interrupted. I just
I
want
was
to mention that.
I was about to say, Jeff, I'm gonna put 2 more dings there. Okay, Becca, please continue.
The only thing I was going to say is that I think the soundtrack in the bar when Bruce Willis is talking to Marcellus about the boxing match and Vincent Vega and I can only ever say Vincent Vega and Sam Jackson. That's wrong. Jules?
Jules.
Yes.
Jules, thank you.
What's
Sorry,
his
when
last
they walk
name?
in.
Winfield.
Jules. I just know Jules.
Field. Oh, okay. Well, when they walk in, there's like this smooth jazz or like this, like these jams in the background that don't sound like they're in the bar. It sounds like a track alongside the audio, and I don't know why. And it was very distracting for me, that whole movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had to write it down. I'm like, why is this?
So you see it as a diegetic soundtrack instead of non-diegetic?
You might as well put the Mario dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Okay, so it's this point when Marcellus tells Vincent,
yeah, like
"Take
you're
Mia.
going out with Mia tonight.
You're going out with Mia." This is following the scene where we learn what happened to Antoine
Yeah.
for massaging
And
Mia's
then-
feet,
and
which
then-
is in the same ballpark, according to Vincent, as cunnilingus.
Yes. But then
Not the words he uses in the movie.
we then cut to black, and we see the words like Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife, which is a fun way to like have titles for each section of this movie.
In my opinion, unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Did you guys watch the 4-part Hateful Eight series on Netflix?
I did not.
No.
Because it's like the entire movie, but 4 hours long. I did, and so like each 4 section has its like own title sequence. I don't know if in the original
I mean,
like theatrical release if they have the title
It does,
sequence.
it does.
Okay.
I think every Tarantino movie is separated into sequences.
Yeah. Once
because-
Upon a Time in Hollywood, Django Unchained.
I think Glorious Bastards has title cards.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure all of them have title cards because he kind of views a lot of his movies as 3 individual movies.
Like segmented.
Yeah.
Like they're 3 different stories telling an overarching story.
I personally would want to know if the movie is either better or worse without them. Because for this movie, I did not need them. But for Inglourious Bastards, maybe. But no, I mean, because that one's more linear than anything.
Because they segment who the main character of each part of the movie is. Because like with Vince Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife, it's John Travolta. With the Gold Watch, it's Bruce Willis. With the final sequence, it's Sam Jackson. And so you kind of segment who the lead character of each section is. Just as in Inglourious Bastards, the first part's Shoshana. Then it shifts to Brad Pitt. Shifts to Michael Fassbender for the whole bar scene.
That's fair.
He kind of segments who the lead character of each part of the movie is with these title cards. Even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood shifts between,
Yeah, maybe I'm double backing on my idea about my opinion of the titles then. Because it's really not that critical. I don't think it's critical, but I guess it lends itself to a little bit of contextualizing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But in the first bit in the section, Travolta is going to
a
his
drug deal.
He's getting heroin from his drug dealer.
I wrote he is so funny in this scene because he's like, yeah, I'll try some of the heroin out. And like it's just all these close-ups of him being
If I like
high.
it, I'll come back and buy 1,000. You mind if I shoot up here?
He looks so stupid when he's pretending to be high in this. He is playing this to such pitch perfection as like this stupid bodyguard who's like setting himself up for failure immediately.
Yeah.
He's so funny in this scene.
Yeah.
And we love a good mirror shot.
Yes.
You know, originally
mirrors in this.
Tarantino
Yeah.
was deciding between the 2 roles that he was going to play, and one of them was the drug dealer, Jimmy, I think, or
Jimmy is who he plays.
who is the name of the drug dealer guy?
I forget, but it's played by Eric Stoltz.
Yeah,
Guy who is not Jeff Bridges.
guy who is not Jeff Bridges. Right.
He does look like the dude.
I was literally gonna say that when watching the movie. It's
Yeah.
like, this is the dude. This is the dude.
Yeah. I mean, this whole movie is Big Lebowski energy, 100%.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So much so, there's like a Bonnie and a bunny in corresponding films. So,
They have very like mid-90s LA vibes.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
So, yeah, he was considering of playing the drug dealer, but I read this on the IMDb trivia page. The reason why he chose to play Jimmy was because he wanted to be behind the camera during Mia's overdose scene. He wanted to be like, make sure he was taking absolute care of that particular moment in the movie.
Makes sense.
Rather than like being in front of the camera and having to act and direct at the same time.
Oh, fascinating.
Makes sense.
Instead, Eric Stoltz plays this character.
You know what's another solution, Tarantino? Don't act in your movies.
Yeah. That's
Please,
a
for
very
the love
good,
of God, please stop.
Yeah. Because the only person who drops the N word besides Sam Jackson in this movie is Tarantino.
Is Tarantino.
I'm looking up.
I rest my case.
And he plays a safe slaveholder in Django Unchained. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Eric
This-
Stoltz. is-
many people
But
have
hey, he
mentioned
blows
this.
himself up, so it's fine.
I got a crude sense of humor over my slightly misguided
Yes.
writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I double back on my misunderstood. Maybe he's not misunderstood.
Following the drug deal and when he shoots up on heroin, I want to comment on the driving scenes in this
Yeah.
film because they're not consistent. some of them are rear
Okay.
projection.
Yeah.
Some of them are actual driving scenes.
Jeff and I literally paused the movie. We're like, okay, we're looking at the same thing right now,
But
right?
it's like black and white
Yeah, he does
rear
black
projection.
and white rear projection.
And
Yeah.
also the same with the Bruce Willis one too, when he was in the taxi cab. But
Yeah.
when Bruce Willis is driving outside of his apartment and he sees Marcellus, that's actual driving scenes.
Tarantino wants this to kind of have this surreal look to it,
Yeah.
and so he uses black and he knew that rear projection is very hard to make look great.
But it's also cheap.
Just by its
Yeah.
nature, it's very hard to make it look great.
Yeah, I wrote down it looks like a poor man's rear projection process.
And so
Like,
rather than just settle for something that doesn't look great in his movie, he decides to what if we just made this an artistic choice and make it black and white? And now it has a pop to it. It has a style. It feels stylistic instead of just shitty rear projection.
right.
But what does that prove? What does that serve the film for?
Well, because I also have an issue with it too. And my issue with it was because when I first saw it was when Vincent was driving while high. I thought, oh, this is like some sort of allegory for him being like really high while driving, because like the car isn't moving, but the background is not. It's in black and white, but it's like really grainy and out of focus. But then when the Bruce Willis post-boxing match taxi drive scene happens, he's not like on drugs or anything. He's just won a boxing match, but it's the same black and white shitty rear projection. So I wonder like what then was the artistic choice in that?
I think the artistic choice in that is that this movie is Pulp Fiction.
Fair enough.
And that there really isn't a point. It just looks interesting.
The point is that there isn't a point.
Yeah, the point is that there isn't.
Oh yeah.
Well, I don't know. To me, that's just kind of lame, considering there are so many things here that, like, oh, Royale with cheese, it means nothing, but it has so much more, like, flair to it than just a really shitty rear projection. And I mean, there's some things about the lighting in this movie that I also have quarrels with, and especially in the rear projection. Like, in Poor Man's Process, the biggest thing is lights are moving.
Yeah.
And you have to physically do that with, like, grips, electrics, and stuff.
Yeah.
And they decided to keep the edge light consistent. So you've got these like street lights
Right.
passing by, but then their hair
There's-
is lit up the entire time.
And there's no refraction or anything that's passing by on their faces to reflect the streetlights passing in the background.
There are, but it's specifically their edge light, the light coming from behind them, which
interesting.
in general wouldn't really happen because the lights are passing through. So it becomes an edge light, key light, and then, it goes away. Kind of in like a string of moves here. But if you look at it and are being critical like me.
And for like nowadays, what you see on like Poor Man's Process and like sound stages are grips with C-stands and quasars that they're just spinning in circles to like mimic that. And
Yeah,
in
or mirrors. Yeah.
or mirrors or anything like that. And this, it just feels like not that.
Because there's some excellent driving stuff. I mean, a lot of the driving stuff is a lot of the same shot structure.
Yeah.
Which is something I also had a little bit of a quorum with. But also, it's not the biggest part of the film, so it's really nothing.
My thing about what I think it comes down to is we're coming at this from a film person perspective, whereas Tarantino had never worked on a film set prior to directing. And so he just like, to all this, he's not thinking like key lights and all that stuff. He's just like, yeah, let's just make a black and white in the background. It'll look kind of cool.
I don't know, but he had a seasoned DP with him.
He's just like, yeah, throw a light behind him. It'll look cool. And the DP's like, that doesn't make sense. He's like, it'll look cool.
I would argue the DP made those choices. I don't think Tarantino's worrying about his edge lights.
At least
just
not
gonna
at this
say.
stage. He's probably not.
No, probably not. No.
Yeah.
And then he has the likes of like Robert Richardson in the future, who I've been told is a bit of a hothead as well. So you don't push around Tarantino. You certainly don't push around Rob Richardson. But this DP, I think you and I discovered during the movie that he also worked with Travolta.
We're gonna actually
in
talk
the
about this
future.
DP again in the future.
In what
He
episode?
directed he DP'd two more Travolta movies, I Am Wrath and Speed Kills.
Yeah.
So we'll be discussing
Yeah.
those in the 2010s.
Oh man.
Yeah. So this DP and Travolta go way back.
Go way back.
It's crazy. And at that point, I admit I kind of formed a poorer opinion of this DP because of that. Even though he shot Reservoir Dogs and Jackie Brown, all the early Tarantino films. But I don't think this movie is lit very well. That's kind of my main thesis is at least a DP in this room. But only because a lot of it is unnaturalistic. And going back to the Poor Man's Process reverse projection driving scene, some of the lighting decisions there don't make sense in the universe. But
Interesting.
That's just really lame talk. I bet we can just continue on with this much more enjoyable movie than I'm making it to be.
So he arrives at
Marcellus and Mia's
Wallace's-
house.
Marcellus and Mia's house. That's when we get the Travolta
Yeah.
wandering
Here's
around
Travolta.
meme.
Which I knew I had to throw in the thumbnail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get he's like, yeah, I'm here to pick you up. And she's like, make a drink.
And that's where we get the tight close up shot
Of the
on the
lips.
lips, and it's like the intercom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look
I mean,
over by the fireplace.
the insert work in Tarantino's films is always just phenomenal. And I don't say phenomenal inserts very often.
yeah.
I like that shot that you mentioned, like it sets up the stakes of this scene.
Yeah.
Because this scene is about Travolta trying to simultaneously make her happy but not sleep with her lest he get thrown out of a building.
Yeah.
She's a very sensual person.
And the shot is just her lips hovering over a phallic object really close, and it's a really tight shot establishing this is what Travolta,
I didn't know that's what you were
this is
talking
what
about.
Travolta's stakes in this scene are. this is his threat.
Is that the interpretation?
I mean,
believe
I guess
so.
it's a interpretation.
I think in both moments that I've seen this movie, it always comes off to me. It's like that Mia's a little more careless in her role as Marcellus's wife that Travolta would like her to be.
yeah.
So like Travolta's like, hey, like Marcellus asked me to take you out, bring you a good time, and I'm gonna do that, but we're gonna do it the way that Marcellus likes it.
Yeah.
And she's on the same page as well, and we get that at the end of the bit, at post heroin overdose. But throughout the middle bit of that, there are some moments when it's tested a few times.
Yeah.
It's tested a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so he picks her up. They go to Jack Rabbit Slim's diner.
Yes.
A 50s diner.
And
That
Travolta's
100%
like,
does not exist.
Travolta's like, I don't think we should go in there. And she says, don't be a
Square. And
she-
there's a graphic.
but she draws a rectangle.
okay.
And it literally, it very much shows it as a rectangle, and it's just so funny. Where she's like, "Don't be a square," but the lines that appear on the screen are very like obviously not a square.
Well, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Yes, but I think it's just another bit Tarantino threw in there of like these
It's
characters. It's like setting up how careless these people are. That like she'll later like snort heroin because she thinks it's coke. Like she can't even draw the square correctly in this moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
But yeah, they walk into Jack Rabbit Slim's.
And Travolta is back in his prime.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah.
Danny Zuko voice slowly kind of comes up, and then the sleeves get shorter, the face gets younger,
The shirts are tucked.
the shirts, his suit jacket turns into a leather jacket.
yeah.
Travolta actually said that this was like his favorite scene to shoot because he says I'm trying to find the exact quote, but he said like it was interesting for me not to be egotistical, but to say I was a living legend walking through what was essentially a living legend wax museum from the time that I was famous.
He's
Yeah.
trying to claim an entire generation he wasn't even there for, though. I
True.
get the Saturday Night Fever, I get the Grease, but he wasn't born in the 50s. Oh, he was
He
born
was
in
born
the
in the
50s.
50s, but he didn't live through the 50s. Those weren't
Right.
his teenage years. His
Yeah.
teenage years were.
I see what he's saying. And for him, it's definitely a relic because he had a slump and he's trying to reflect on his good old days.
And I've read there's a film critic who has an argument about this scene that Travolta's presence makes it so much better. It's essential to the power of the scene and to the film that Travolta's entire career becomes backstory to the scene where the myth of the movie star who's fallen out of favor but still resides in the memory as the king of disco from Saturday Night Fever.
But what does that say about Vincent Vega, my guy?
It doesn't say anything about Vincent Vega,
Right.
but it
Right.
adds context to the scene as the scene is about Travolta.
And I think that's something that Tarantino does a lot, where
Yeah.
it's even with that outside of the context of the characters, like Leonardo DiCaprio playing a washed up actor who,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's kind of
yeah.
like, and like and alongside Brad Pitt, who's his stunt double, it's kind of like it points fun unto itself that doesn't have any context to the character within the story, but the actor who's playing the role.
And he does it with Sam Jackson, but it's also Sam Jackson playing his like bad motherfucker over and over and
100%.
over.
The,
and over again.
the Tarantino thing has always been that he makes movies about movies.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Ding.
And his movies are simultaneously criticism of other movies as much as they are stories that he is telling.
Yeah. Like Bruce Lee in Once Upon a Time was apparently an asshole. You know? Which pissed a lot of people off, but that's Tarantino.
Yeah.
You know?
Gene Siskel actually said that, Pulp Fiction, stands with a bunch of other violent watershed moments that shake up a tired, bloated film industry and make us reflect on how dull other movies had become. He says the ultimate honor for Pulp Fiction is that it criticizes other movies. Mm-hmm. And as such, I think Travolta's role in this is very much a reflection on his previous work and how he had just become kind of a washed up, not a druggie in real life, but like a character who is kind of just washed up. And if he doesn't change his ways, he's going to wind up in the gutter.
Which he does in this movie.
But doesn't in real life because he learns his lesson.
Well, he learns
his lesson for a little bit. He learns his lesson for a few years.
Error number 3, my lord. Number 3.
But they sit down. They sit down. This very cool chat.
She orders they sit in a card table. Travolta gets a bloody steak with a vanilla Coke. I very much remembered that because I was like, what?
She gets a $5 milkshake.
She gets a bloody burger with a $5 shake.
I love that Vincent Vega was just like, I need to know how this $5 milkshake tastes. Like, honestly, if Vincent Vega were alive today, which I'm guessing he would be, but if he was a real character alive today, he would be the ones arguing about minimum wage raising and making like $18 burgers at McDonald's. Yes. That would be Vincent Vega.
That would be Vincent Vega.
Because this movie, he's like, $5 for milkshake. That's absurd. And like last week, we paid $20 for 2 like scoops of ice cream.
$22 for ice cream cones in New England. Correct.
I'm glad Vincent's dead.
Yeah.
He would not survive.
He would not have thrived. He would not have thrived
in the modern times.
But I love that just like all the little character bits in the scene that Travolta's nervous because, like you said, he can't go too far in either direction.
Yeah.
And Mia's kind of having fun, like prodding and poking him.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like she makes him roll her a cigarette, like even though she has one, she hides it and then's like, I'm out.
Don't you hate that?
Yeah, don't you hate that?
Long, uncomfortable silences when you can just sit together and shut the fuck up.
And she turns it around because it's an uncomfortable silence. And she points it out to Travolta and he gets nervous. That's an uncomfortable silence. And then she's like,
I'm going to go powder my nose. You find something to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Becca had actually pointed out when we watched that she really liked that when she goes into the bathroom, there's a bunch of women actually powdering their nose.
And she's the one doing coke.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know she was about...
God damn.
Yeah, I did not know she was about to do a line of coke.
Someone say they have coke out there. Jack, stay in the room, please.
God damn it.
Jack just really wanted coke.
Well, okay, so because I hadn't seen this movie before, I did not know she was about to do a line of coke, and I knew she was going to go dancing with Travolta. I did not know at what point that was going to happen. But when she goes, "I'm going to go powder my nose," I'm like, I immediately went in my brain like powder or cocaine. I even wrote it down, cocaine or makeup. And then when it was like both in the bathroom, I was just like, "Oh, this is good. Yeah. That's a good line. That's
a good bit.
That's funny."
I like my favorite thing in this scene is that my like life idol Richard Nixon is the announcer at the the dance.
Wait a minute.
For the record, people, he does not approve of Richard Nixon. Neither does this podcast or myself.
Is it Richard Nixon or is it Jimmy?
It is Richard Nixon.
I thought it was.
Look at the nose prosthetic the dude's wearing. It is Richard. It is Richard Nixon.
But how does it make?
I'm not a crook.
How does it make sense with like the 50s?
He was the vice president.
But like Richard Nixon
ran for president.
He wasn't an icon until
he was an icon.
He
was the presidential candidate
in the 50s, but he didn't become an icon until Watergate.
Would you consider Bernie Sanders an icon right now?
For different reasons.
No, he ran for president and he's a senator. Richard Nixon.
Would you rub a man's feet?
Richard, if you consider that Richard Nixon was an icon in the 50s and 60s.
Fuck you.
There's even that line in Greece where they're like that nice Vice President Nixon.
Oh. Don't try and quiz Jeff on Nixon. I promise you will not win.
Nixon.
It's just like it's a weird image to put Marilyn Monroe and Richard Nixon side by side.
Yes.
That's a weird one for me. Like I'm like, really? Are these two the like most equated like icons figures? Like you couldn't put somebody I don't know.
Oh, Jeff is really gonna school you now.
Oh, here we go.
Wait, that's not Richard Nixon.
That is not. I was trying to find a picture of Marilyn Monroe and Richard Nixon together.
But
one does not
eventually
exist.
they
Here's a
end
picture
up.
of him and Elvis. That's funny.
They eventually end up on the stage.
Yes, they wind up on the stage because Mia wants to dance in the competition. She says, "I will win that trophy, or you're going to be in trouble." with
And
Marcellus.
Vincent is very uncomfortable, and so he gets on stage. Which, funny
and
enough,
then he gets very comfortable.
I was
well,
gonna say.
in the IMDb trivia of this, Uma Thurman was actually very nervous about this scene because she knew John Travolta had a dancing background.
Yeah.
And so I think she was like asking him for advice, and he's like, just shut up and like go with it. It's like something along the lines that he said.
That's kind of cool.
Just shut up and move with it.
And then
I would dance with John Travolta.
And also, there is a behind the
Kevin Bacon.
scenes. There is behind the scenes footage of this of when they're filming the scene. Tarantino's like showing them the
Yeah.
dance like behind the camera.
Tarantino,
man-child.
Travolta also picked a lot of his dance moves for this scene. I found this quote where Quentin recommended the twist, remembers Travolta, and I said, well, little Johnny Travolta won the twist contest when I was 8 years old, so I know every version. But you may add other novelty dances that were very special in the day. Tarantino asked, what do you mean? Travolta said there was the Batman, the Hitchhiker, the Swim, as well as the twist. So he showed them to them, and he loved them. And then he said, I'll teach Uma the steps, and when you want to see a different step, call it out. So Tarantino was on the dance floor with them, and Travolta would just do one of the dances, and whenever Tarantino wanted to shift it, he would tell him, shift it to this, and Travolta would just
Can you imagine
immediately
just being
adjust.
the camera operator for that scene, and you just hear like Tarantino like, all right, the Batman. And then they're doing something different. It's like, the fuck? What's going on?
But that's kind of the thing. Like the conversation that they're having is basically a conversation about silences, whatever. This is where I was like, oh, this is just verbose, kind of like chit chatty, but not a natural conversation that two people, especially Vincent Vega. I would assume maybe Mia would have, but like not Vincent Vega. But then he's like, oh, I don't want to dance. The way he dances is not the way that someone who says I don't want to dance dances.
Well, I think it is because he knows he's good at dancing, and he knows that he'll be really attractive to Mia if he dances.
Is that reaching?
I don't think it's reaching. I think he does
I think
not.
it's a little reach.
I think he knows that if he gets up on that dance floor, it's going to escalate things, and it does.
A little Saturday Night Fever.
Because the dancing just fades out. Like there's no end. Like they don't win the trophy there. It fades to black, and then we cut to them back at
Well,
the
that's
house.
because the Puerto Rican couple wins, Jeff. And
good call out. But they cut back to the house, and they have the trophy.
Yeah.
and they're all very drunk, very
Yes.
high.
And Mia like rests in the controls, like I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then there's just an intercut between.
Travolta giving himself a pep talk.
He's giving himself a pep talk.
Get one
While
drink,
Mia's in there snorting heroin and like having an overdose.
snorting his heroin that he got from drug dealer Steve.
Yes.
I don't know
His name
his-
is Lance. I looked it up.
Okay.
Eric Schultz is playing Lance.
Drug
Lance.
dealer Lance.
Jeff
Yes.
Bridges,
And Jeff Bridges, the
the
dude.
dude.
The dude.
Yeah.
But he comes out and he's like, now Mia, I had a great night. And,
And
it's just this
she-
shot of her like,
On the ground,
Yeah.
nose bloody, vomit in her mouth, Breaking Bad style, basically dead.
yes.
Not quite dead, but
And so
on the verge.
he picks her up and runs out to his car. And then we cut to Eric Stoltz just like sitting down watching a cartoon.
The dude. Just doing the dude.
And he gets like phone
He's
call.
eating cereal,
Yeah.
at night.
And Charles is like, she's ODing, man. I need help. He's like,
Don't bring her here.
And then he's like, I'm coming up. And Eric Stoltz runs to his door, and it's so funny. The
Yeah.
car just like skids across his driveway and crashes
Crashes
into his
in.
garage. Travolta runs out carrying
He's like,
Mia.
you know who Marcellus is? Well, this is his wife, and if she dies, and I tell you didn't help, it's gonna be bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny in this that when they're arguing, Vincent just drops Mia and just like it's these two men who literally could not give less of a care about her life. They're just scared about what it will do to them. And
yeah.
it's just showing how little they care about it. They're just dropping her body on the
Yeah.
ground.
Like he's looking for his little black medical book, and he's just like spending so much time trying to find this. Where it's like,
Yeah.
like I don't know where you left it. It's like you're not gonna find it in here. Just grab the adrenaline shot.
I love those moments of chaos where everybody's screaming
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just like, I gotta find my black book. The what? My black book. What do you need a black book for? I need it to the thing.
Why-
But
you're-
we need the black book. Why
you're
do you
not
need a
gonna
black
find it in there.
Yeah, so it's like, and there's like those, I think Hateful Eight is also covered in those kinds of moments. And I love them so much because I'm pretty sure it's got to be improv, number one. And it's just like, and the way they choose to cover that scene where he's like, I need my book. All right. And so he runs to another room and we completely leave Vincent Vega and Mia in the other room, and we're watching these two, like the drug dealer like couple, like complain and scream at each other.
There's just so many
through a doorway.
There's so many details in this scene that I love, where it is mostly covered in the one shot of like panning back and forth between the guy in his room rustling through the stuff, his wife screaming at him, Travolta like shaking Mia on the ground, and there's like this random girl who's just smoking a bong behind them all.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I also really like the detail that when they're in the wide shot, in the corner of the screen, there's a very prominently placed board game stack. And the two games on top, the only ones that are like well lit, are Operation Life.
Yeah, when Jeff pointed that out, I closed my book. I'm like, I'm done.
It's literally just Operation Life in the corner of the scene where they're trying to save her life. It's very good. It's a very good bit of production design.
Did not
There's
notice
another
that.
little piece of production design that I'll mention later on.
Yes, I can't remember what that is.
That is
I
something
got
we
you.
do have to appreciate with Tarantino's films. Production design.
Oh, is it the mise en scène?
Moose in scene.
Moose en scene.
Moose in
The moose in
scene.
scene.
There is, though, some really rough handheld work in this scene. Really rough handheld operating.
Here's,
and
here's the shot.
yeah, the two board games.
Oh, well, and they are prominently lit too.
Yeah, Operation Life.
Yeah. It's like at some point a camera shadow is seen actually too.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like when the dude is in the room and they yell at each other, he's like, "Get out of my way," and he goes like really close in front of the camera. You can see the shadow of the camera on his chest as he walks past.
Yeah.
And so it just, for me, like the handheld there was just like really rough, really, really shaky. And obviously you're like, oh, it's an intense scene or whatever. But really, like there's difference between controlled chaos and something that just looks really
Rapidly
floppy.
put together.
Really
Like they have
sloppy.
2 hours left in their day, and it's just like, grab a camera, let's fucking.
Yeah, I
do
don't want to
this.
assume that they necessarily were just like letting it go by the wayside, but there was definitely something a little odd there.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the camera shadow and the distance to the sun. Yeah, anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then they have the adrenaline shot.
Yes. And she shoots up.
Like, do you have a magic marker? I need to
fucking
mark a
felt
spark.
pen.
Where's the heart? You need to jam it through the breastplate.
And that's
You guys just,
that's
so
the
I stab
first
her 3
time.
times? No, just stab her once.
That's the first time that random woman, the dark-haired woman in the room, finally perks up and she's smiling. She's just like, "Whoa!"
This is so interesting.
Yeah,
It's so funny.
And then immediately stab. Mia comes back to
Yes.
life.
yeah,
Cut to them in the car looking completely like slobbered.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think she could do a really good Mia post-overdose costume.
Why?
For the record, the audience, I do not do crack cocaine.
No, I think it would be a good costume
Oh, okay.
for you. I think it'd be funny.
Context: I have bangs. Like,
Nobody's business.
yeah. Well, no.
Well, you've great bangs.
Oh, I meant like Mia. Okay, whatever.
But they get,
Gross.
they get back to the
a room.
house. And earlier in the scene when they're in the diner, Mia is describing this pilot she acted in.
Oh, yeah. Well, that
that-
was also described in the Vincent Jules.
That
bit,
never
too.
got picked up for series, and it's essentially the plot of Kill Bill.
Right.
But she says every episode I'm going to tell a joke, but she doesn't want to tell Travolta the joke. As a thanks for saving her life, even though he kind of also nearly killed her, she tells him the joke, and it's 3 tomatoes are walking down the street, and a little one gets stuck behind, and the daddy tomato turns around and says, "Hey, catch up."
Well, he squashes it.
He
Squashes
squashes
him
him and says, "Catch up."
Yeah. And he's like, "All right, I'm going to go home and have a
Yeah.
heart attack now."
And then we cut to the next sequence. I'm interested. I'm going to pose this to you too. I have a friend who I was just, when I logged this movie on my Letterboxd, I just was like, what do my friends think of this movie? Think of Pulp Fiction. And one of them has a review where he's like, the movie should have ended right there. If you want to make a movie that's very textually about nothing, the first scene has no payoff, and which is just Tim Roth like describing the movie. You then get a great sequence where they hold up those guys. You get they hand off the briefcase so that they walk in with different costumes. Makes no sense. And then you get this entire like Mia sequence, which serves as the climax of the movie, and ends with her telling a joke that has no point.
Okay, but the movie doesn't necessarily have to explain, even with the ending, it doesn't explain everything going on. It doesn't explain why they're robbing a bank. It doesn't explain how these people became hitmen. It doesn't explain why Marcellus is such an ass. Like,
and his argument is more that the movie lags a little bit after that, and that seems like a perfect 70-minute electric movie, that first 70.
because after that, it's the Chris Walken watch up the
It's
ass.
my ass.
Put his watch up his ass.
I mean, it's basically Bruce Willis from there on. They're like, don't need it.
Yeah. Then
I mean, half of that storyline with Bruce Willis is in a motel.
yeah,
With
talking about potbellies.
talk about potbellies.
I do like his girlfriend. She's fun.
Yeah.
Stuart, what time are we at?
We are at an hour and 45.
All right, let's get cooking. Another 3 hours to go.
Well, you knew this was going to be a 2-hour podcast.
We knew this would be a long episode.
Yeah.
It had to be.
Yeah. Well, we have
Um,
Becca here with us
yeah.
to talk about cinematography and lighting stuff, which is very interesting.
Which is very dense for a movie like this.
Yeah.
But the next scene is a single. People talk about great one-scene performances. They don't talk about great one-shot performances. Because Chris Walken has one shot in this movie.
Yeah.
He just walks into a room. He's like, "Hey, sport.
There's
I
one
was
thing.
in the POW camp with your dad." That's bad. I'm sorry.
I will mention one dense thing about this scene that's about a man shoving a watch up his ass is that the fact that Chris Walken is framed center frame, and you had told me this scene is done out in one shot, and he's center frame.
Yep.
At the beginning, his eye line is to the left, and then when
Yeah.
he starts talking about that watch, and
going up the ass.
his eye line is right dead center, basically into the camera. His eye line shifts.
It feels like
Yeah.
Christopher Walken is talking to you.
Yeah.
He's like, "Your dad, I shoved his watch up my ass."
I've had this watch.
He shoved his watch up his ass, and then I shoved that watch up my ass.
I know
And now
I'm
I
not
give
the
this
first
watch
one to mention that,
to
but
you.
I just thought that's so
Yeah.
fun, and it's a way to make a one shot very interesting.
Yeah.
It's fun.
We then cut to Bruce Willis holding the watch in his hand. Oh no, he doesn't have the watch in his hand, but it's established he was the kid who Christopher
Because he
Walken.
wakes up like it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like the ass watch story
Christopher
scares him.
Chris Walken keeps coming to him in the night.
And he just whispers, "The watch up my ass."
Up my ass.
But yeah, so then he's at a boxing match.
Yes.
And this was sort of alluded to earlier in the Vincent Jules storyline afterwards, where it's that long shot on Bruce Willis. That's what he's asking him to do, is
Yeah.
to throw a fight for the money.
Bruce Willis has too much pride. He does not throw the fight.
He wins.
He
Runs
runs
the guy to a pulp.
Yes.
Kills him.
Kills him.
And his son, who gets in a chemical accident, and his eyes become blind.
Oh, this is a Daredevil bit.
And then he becomes a superhero, to which case he finds Marcellus Wallace still operating.
He finds his ass.
Oh my god.
I was not expecting the Daredevil bit, but
Is that
Makes
because the
sense.
guy who plays Marcellus plays Wilson Fisk?
No.
no.
Two different black guys.
That's the Green Mill guy.
Yeah.
Green Mill. Oh my god.
the Green.
Oh my god.
The Green Mile.
Green Mile.
Oh my god.
It's
no.
almost hour 2.
It's almost hour 2.
We're all
Fuck.
very loopy. It's like raining heavily outside.
Yeah, I was gonna
It's very
say I can hear it in my headphones of the
Yeah.
rain. So for the audience, if you heard like some background wash noise, it's because it's raining very heavily in Chicago right
because
now.
Chicago decided to drop 2 tornadoes in this past week.
Yes.
Yeah, it really has been 2 tornadoes this past week.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway,
But Bruce
So
Willis runs off.
he's immediately on the run. He has to hop in a cab, and he's with a very weird cab driver. He's very
Yes.
interested in learning about what it's like to kill a man.
I want a movie about her.
Well, there might actually already be one.
Oh yes.
Do you know this bit?
I
this
read
trivia
it this
bit?
morning.
So the actress who plays the cab driver, this is another one of those that you wouldn't know about the context of her character, but the context of her as an actress and what role she's played. And she plays a role, I believe, in a TV series. Jeff, is that right?
It was a short film that was turned into a feature film after this movie, in which she essentially plays like
Like a cleanup crew assassin or something like that.
she's like someone hunting down serial killers.
Oh my god.
The movie was produced by Tarantino.
And so that
Okay.
whole bit with the cab driver was like intentional.
It was
in
an
that-
homage to her short film.
Yeah.
That then they turned into a feature after this movie. So she's essentially playing the same role.
Yeah.
In all three of them.
Well, I was about to say I want a movie with her, and I have one.
That
Amazing.
exists. It's called Curdled. Check it out online.
Oh my god.
It's at this point that Willis goes to this motel, and there's a lot of stuff in the motel.
Yes.
This is, I thought it was the least interesting in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he's just like hiding, and that's all they're doing is they're just hiding.
He just talks with his girlfriend about like how she wants a pot belly and wants to eat blueberry pancakes, and how he's just like, yeah, baby, yeah, I'm Bruce Willis, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me. Besides, I think his girlfriend's charming.
Yes, she gives a really nice performance in these scenes.
Yeah.
She's very.
Fabian.
Fabian.
That's Fabian. That's the character name. I don't know the actress's name.
There's one really good bit in this scene where Bruce Willis is in the shower, and you've seen the Simpsons movie. You know that part where like Bart is riding the skateboard nude, and they just go to this like complicated level to have everything cover up his dick.
Yeah.
In this scene, Bruce Willis is doing that. He's always covered by like a towel or like someone's hand, or like Fabian walks by right as he does, until the final moment where you see like a flash of his dick. It literally is like the Simpsons movie scene. It's so strange.
Bruce Willis, we see your dick in this movie.
Yes, we do.
You know Bruce Willis had a past in porn?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't. I was just making that up.
Oh, no, wait,
yeah.
never mind. I'm thinking of Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone had a past in porn.
I'm thinking.
I'm
thinking
shocked
Stallone.
by both.
Bruce
Okay.
Willis did not have a past in
Bruce
porn.
Willis. My bad. I randomly responding because I was thinking of Stallone. Yeah, come on, I'm good at this.
Oh god.
So-
Okay, so after the hotel, what-
right.
So
What
the,
happens after the motel?
and
I'm already-
the inciting incident for the remainder of the Bruce Willis storyline is the watch isn't there.
Yeah.
Because he
Like, I
tells
specifically told
Fabian
you.
he tells Fabian earlier before the fight, because I think he already knows he's not going to throw it.
Yeah.
To pack up all their things, and he tells her specifically to not forget the watch.
Yeah.
But it's like it's like day 2 or day 3 in the motel, and he's actually starting to look for it and can't find it. And that's when he starts throwing shit around, and he gets really angry at Fabian, and he's like, I specifically told you to remember to get the fucking watch, and all that stuff. So it's at this point that Butch, that's Bruce Willis's character name.
Besides, he's going back to their apartment, even though there's
Besides
probably hitmen there.
Even though he's being hunted down by hitmen and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
he
and
goes,
he's not even like real sneaky about it either.
not
Walks in
really.
through the front door.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a really cool like Steadicam shot that just follows him from the car all the way up into like his apartment. It's like a really long Steadicam shot that follows him from behind, and like, yeah, he's not being sneaky about it.
He's remarkably sneaky in that he parks 2 blocks away, to hide his car, but then walks straight in through the front door of his building.
Yeah. And then conveniently finds a Uzi with a silencer on it.
Well, he finds the watch first.
Oh yeah,
And then he
does find
finds
the
a
watch.
gun.
And then he finds the Uzi with the silencer, and then there's a toilet flush, which is a thematic motif in Pulp Fiction, that whenever Vincent Van Gogh goes to the bathroom, something bad happens.
Oh.
So I think the
have
first
heard of it,
time
yeah.
was in the first bit,
Mia O'D's.
Mia O'D's. The second time is a
dies.
Bruce Willis, and that's when he dies. And the third time is when he's in the bathroom at the breakfast diner.
Yeah.
So every time Vincent goes to the bathroom, something bad happens.
Yeah.
So there's a
Wow.
toilet flush, door opens, it's Vincent, John Travolta.
Bruce Willis murders him.
Like fills him up with bullets.
I did not know this happened, so this one really shocked me.
Yeah, you were
when it
very
happened.
surprised when that happened.
I was like, oh. It was like Christoph Waltz all over again, man. I'm just, so sad.
Just kills the dude.
And Travolta's the one guy in this movie who could not be redeemed. He just like kind of stuck to his drug and
Are you saying he rejected salvation?
essentially yes.
Yeah.
Well, he took the
essentially-
salvation of
that's
L.
essentially
Ron
what-
Hubbard.
What is a miracle?
That's essentially what Sam Jackson's doing at the end, and
Yeah.
Travolta doesn't get it.
Yeah. So, yeah, he kills John Travolta, and then Butch gets in a car, and he's heading out. He's got the watch, and that's when he finds no other than Marcellus Wallace
Walking in front of his car
across
with like cupcakes or donuts.
the
or
street.
Yeah, that's
that
good.
just rams through the fucking guy, and then gets in a car accident himself.
something. Kathy Griffin's there.
Kathy Griffin's there.
Yeah.
Marcellus
She's
Wallace.
holding Trump's severed head.
Oh, God.
Time traveling.
Time traveling.
somehow.
And she plays herself. In the
Yeah.
credits, it says Kathy Griffin as herself, which
It's
is
such a strange.
confusing.
I'm honestly curious if she was just walking down the street and saw the filming, and
Yeah.
Tarantino was like, "Hey, be in this." 'Cause I watched a movie recently where that actually happened, where an actor was walking down the street and they end up cameoing in the movie.
Spider-Man 2
Nope.
with Willem Dafoe. Because that's what happened there.
No, in the
Oh, you don't know the story?
You're going to have to tell me after.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you it now.
Oh, okay.
So, Spider-Man, everyone knows Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, Spider-Man 1.
yes,
Willem Dafoe was in New York City while they were filming Spider-Man 2. And they were filming the final scene with Harry Osborn, like, having, like, his little surprise moment that he finds out Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe sees the film crew filming. He finds out it's the Spider-Man crew with Sam Raimi. That very moment, they decide to plug him into the scene and add him in as
Spirit of the Green Goblin.
Spirit of the
It's
Green
never really
Goblin.
explained how that works in the movie. If it's just a vision of Harry, or if he's actually the ghost of the Green Goblin.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that scene was, they just added that with Willem Dafoe because he was walking in New York one day and found the production of Spider-Man 2.
We watched The Holiday, the Nancy Meyers film with Jack Black and a lot of other people in it. Dustin Hoffman was actually walking by the set of that movie. Oh. And he's like, "What are they doing?" And they're like, "You want to be in the movie?"
Yeah,
And
so
so-
he shows up in the background. They talk about The Graduate, and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's a good film."
Jack
He's like
Nich-
in the background.
Jack Nicholson's like, "That song from The Graduate. Here's to you, Sabba Dabba Doo," the way Jack Black does, and then
Yeah.
in the
I think
background,
you said
Dustin
Jack
Hoffman's like,
Nicholson a second ago.
"Someone say my name." Jack, stay in the room, please. This guy.
I lent myself to that one. Okay, so
So he runs Marcellus over. Marcellus is the first one to wake up. There's a lot of people like helping him up. He sees the car that Bruce Willis wrecked. Bruce Willis is also, they're all kind of like wounded and shaky, but Marcellus gets up. He pulls out his gun, just starts shooting, hits Kathy Griffin.
no, it hits a different woman.
Or it hits
but
a different
Kathy
woman, yeah.
Ribbon.
And this
she's got
very
hers.
like Reservoir Dogs style, like
I was gonna say it's very reminiscent.
grimy gunfight where like it's these two dudes who have been presented as like high status badasses throughout the movie, now just being like pathetic, like injured, limping around as they shoot guns at each other.
Yeah.
It's a very Tarantino thing to like deconstruct a like badass fight scene and make it extremely not badass.
Yeah.
In the end, and kind of show like the pointlessness of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But they stumble into a like
An antique shop.
it's like a pawn. There's
pawn.
like guns in it. There's a really fun detail on
There's
the outside.
chainsaws.
I thought it was fun. There's a neon sign on the outside that says "We sell watch batteries." The thing that the whole thing is about a watch, and it's essentially like Bruce Willis gets like revived by this sequence. He gets a fresh lease on life, like he gets his watch batteries in this scene. I think that's fun.
That is fun. Maybe that isn't. Maybe that's
I think
not
that's
a
actually.
dinging
I think that's
moment.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's a piece of production design that I didn't pick out, but I was going to pick out something in this scene.
Is it the neon, the other neon sign?
Yeah, the other
Okay,
neon
yeah.
sign. Yeah.
If you want to go for that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we're getting too far ahead because they get inside the store and they start really beating each other, and the guy on the front desk like kidnaps them.
Yes.
Okay.
He holds a shotgun and kidnaps them and ties them up in the basement with like.
and they wake up. They're gagged. Ball
Yeah.
gagged.
Yeah, but the sign upstairs was for skilled something.
Yeah.
But the letters are blurred out, so it says "Kill Ed."
And then Zed comes in.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
I don't know if there's anything to it. Part of me thinks there's got to be something to it because
It's
I don't think his name is his name Zed or Ed.
Zed.
It's Zed.
Crap.
So it's either kill Zed, like, and they just didn't have the Z, or it's just killed.
Or it's just killed. Yeah, either one. Something I just
When they wake up in a basement, they're both ball gagged. Not a
Yeah.
good thing to ever wake up when you're unconscious.
Yeah.
I gotta
And-
say,
Ain't my
of
worst
all
Tuesday
the
night.
Of all the ways that you could wake up from being knocked out, being ball gagged is probably one of the worst ones.
Yeah. Well, okay, so going into this scene, both with Reservoir Dogs, I've only seen once. I've been told the whole what is it, what's the song playing
Stuck in the
Res-
middle with you.
Stuck in the Middle. And then this scene are like some of Tarantino's like most violent.
Yeah.
After both, I don't know what people are talking about.
For the time they
For
were
the time.
they were really shocking. Tarantino these movies kind of changed the paradigm of violence in cinema.
Yeah.
so that nowadays they feel very tame to us. But for the moment, where like people were existing in a very like PG-13 world.
Yeah, I
This
guess-
is post 80s too.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and LA is probably in the 90s. This is still like the war on drugs is going really hard because we just shifted from crack to heroin at this point.
Yeah.
And so I think the desensitization of violence on screen was still happening.
Yeah.
But Tarantino like went
He pushed it.
2 bumps ahead
Yeah, I
of
guess
what the curve
opening the
was.
door and seeing 2 grown men like rape another grown man.
Yeah.
I guess in a
mean,
fashion for me to say it
Deliverance
wasn't
did
even
it.
that
Yeah.
violent.
What year did Deliverance come out?
That's the 70s.
Yeah, that was the 70s, and that was a very graphic man-on-man rape scene.
Yeah, I mean the 70s were unhinged.
Yeah,
There's
70s
a lot
were
of
unhinged.
like canceled movies from that era.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the 90s, but okay, I guess, yeah, but I was picturing like torture scene,
Hey, you got a pretty mouth.
like prolonged torture scenes that I've seen in other films that are
Yeah.
far more graphic.
And now we just have torture porn films.
Yeah,
these
total.
are the movies that kind of open the door to that.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like, Inglourious Bastards, I think, has far more violent moments, and people don't talk to it like they talk
Hitler,
about it like they do Reservoir
explodes in
Dogs.
a pool of blood.
Yeah,
Well, and they carve a guy's forehead.
Yes.
yeah,
you know?
which is a really hard sequence to watch.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're tied up, all gagged, and
Zed the cop shows up.
Zed the cop shows up. They get the gimp.
They get the gimp out. It's like a guy in like a tight leather outfit who they keep in a box.
They keep it in a box.
Who was Joel Schumacher's inspiration for Bane a couple years later?
Batman around. Girls. And he doesn't have that voice. Then.
No, he's just like,
No, he's just a brute. Yeah,
he's just like,
yeah.
so
Kill the bat.
what's the gimp's point?
They just have him watch. He's like their object. They use him when they don't.
It's
have,
like an intimidation scheme.
They use him when they don't have like fresh, like victims. It feels like the gimp. The gimp feels like Reek in Game of Thrones. For like they just kind of
Yeah.
use him.
Yeah. Sorry, Beck and I are picking up some background chatter.
Oh, are you guys hearing that background chatter?
Yeah, a little bit of background chatter.
This
Yeah.
is our best sounding episode yet.
Man, I'd imagine this in our old apartment, but here. So you can hear. I mean, we have headphones on. You don't. So
It's probably not that much because, you know,
yeah,
I'm
I
sure
guess we'll cut this part
I
out.
could probably take it out.
Okay.
I suppose whenever we don't have a guest, we can stick in that room where it's a lot quieter.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But
So, yeah, they get the gimp out and then they drag.
Ving Rhames. Oh yeah, Ving
Mar-
Rhames plays Marcellus Wallace. We haven't even said Ving Rhames this episode yet.
I didn't know that was his name.
But they drag Marcellus Wallace into the room and they close the door.
Yeah.
And Butch, who is still like tied up and ball gagged with the gimp alone,
Yeah, successfully breaks out of his bindings.
breaks out of his bindings.
Murders the gimp with one punch.
Yeah, he does.
Well, the gimp then hangs
Yeah.
by his neck.
He like punches him with his body. I mean, he killed a guy earlier, so like
Yeah,
it makes
fair enough.
sense.
Fair enough.
He kills the gimp.
He's
then
on
runs
the verge of
upstairs.
escaping and then somehow develops a conscience
Yes,
and decides
he gets redemption.
maybe I shouldn't let Marcellus Wallace get raped,
And it's this really funny sequence.
where he looks for a weapon,
Oh,
What does he grab
yeah.
first?
a hammer,
And then
A
baseball bat.
and then
he looks at a chainsaw,
and then
a katana. He finds a katana.
yeah, samurai sword. He just
When it was kind of toying with my impression of what the scene was going to be too,
Yeah.
because I thought it was going to be like this ultra violent, bloody limbs.
I was
you know.
kind of hoping the chainsaw was gonna be.
So when he pulled the chainsaw, I'm like, oh, this
Here
is
we
actually going to be
go.
it.
Here
and
we
then,
go.
I mean, even the katana, like 100%, yeah, but it's
katana
still
violence, very tame.
then he becomes
I don't
a
know.
samurai.
Kill Bill had to go black and white because of all the blood.
Well, I just meant for Pulp Fiction
Oh.
this particular scene because he like does one like slice on the guy's front
Yeah.
torso, which has a little bit of blood, and then he stabs him like from behind, but
Yeah.
it's off
Yeah.
camera,
Yeah.
and then there is a shotgun blow to Zed's groin,
Yeah.
but like that's very obscured.
I'm never really bothered by gunshot wounds.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go medieval on his ass.
yeah, he's about to do Gerard Butler from Law Abiding
Yeah.
Citizen on his ass, inject him with porcupine venom and adrenaline to keep him from passing out.
Oh my.
That's probably the best torture scene in terms of like if you wanted to watch a movie to like educate on how to best torture somebody, Law Abiding Citizen, Gerard Butler.
What about Princess Bride? They lay it all out for you. I just took 10 years off your life. Anyway, sorry.
Alternatively, if you want to see something that's actually like gross, Zero Dark 30 is a way that they show it.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah,
And
that's
what?
it. Zero Dark 30.
It's like actual
Yeah, that's like
Guantanamo
actual
Bay.
When it's
torture.
real
Yeah.
life torture that
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
done because America is
The best country in the world.
Wow. How did we get here? Okay.
so he kicks the door open and Zed is mid rape
Yes.
on Marcellus.
Yeah.
And he kills them all with the katana.
Well, he kills the one guy with
yeah.
a katana, and then Zed is about to go for his gun, and Bruce Willis has a katana. There's that bit where he's like, "Go for it! I want you to go for it."
Yeah.
And then right as he's about to shotgun blast to the groin, Marcellus Wallace has a shotgun, which I kind of thought was great homage to the beginning of the movie when it's like we should have had shotguns.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's not because they have more guys and they need to kill, but simply because they need a bigger firepower for the punishment that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So yeah, shotgun shell to the groin. Zed is discombobulated, and
Ving Rhames is just like, to Bruce Willis, he's just like, we cool. Leave town tonight.
he's like, two things. One, we never speak of this to anyone ever
Never spoken
again.
of.
Two, your LA privileges are revoked.
Yeah.
You leave tonight.
But that's the thing we also didn't mention when he's picking out all these weapons. He's slowly making the decision, being like, I can get myself out of this whole situation that I'm in if I rescue Marcellus, and I can run away with my bride.
It's not for Marcellus's well-being that he saves him,
Right.
because of how
for his own ass.
slow he is. Like, as you think, for somebody, if it changed the dynamic of the relationship, he's probably going to like rush in first thing that he can grab to try to save someone from being raped. But no, he's methodical about it.
Yeah.
He's like, let me let this guy get a little bit of raping in.
Oh gosh.
You know, and but in the end, it does absolve him of this
Burden.
the hit that Marcellus puts out on Butch. So
Yeah. Which is a lot more resolution than a lot of these characters get.
Yeah.
yeah, because he gets on a bike
Runs off to the sunset.
Yeah.
and then goes to the motel, gets Fabian, who Fabian's like, what happened? What happened? Did you get your blueberry pancakes, baby? No, they didn't
Where's
have
my
any.
Civic?
I had to do buttermilk.
They didn't have blueberry. They didn't have blueberry. I had to do buttermilk.
Buttermilk. Finally get on the chopper. It's on a bike, baby. It's a chopper.
They're
And
not
They zip
rocks.
off.
and
They're
then
minerals.
They ride off into the sunset, both
That's-
alive, both well.
And that's chronologically the end of the movie.
It's chronologically the end of the movie.
Yeah. And then we get an awesome.
Then
We
the
cut-
Bonnie situation.
Yeah, we cut to the Bonnie situation.
Are you ready for this, Jeff?
Yeah.
We are 2 hours in.
oh my
This
god.
is officially our longest episode.
It's officially
Really?
our
Yeah.
longest episode.
Our longest episode previously is, I think, Look Who's Talking. Which
An
is
hour and 50 minutes. Hour 55, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
So you've officially beat Mary Grace.
Our longest episode.
Yeah.
So now we're at the Bonnie situation.
Yes. What a great sequence this is. We're back at the beginning of the movie where it's like Jules is giving his like,
And they will know
my name
when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Ezekiel 25:17, which
Which
Tarantino
is
made
on-
it for this movie. It's not a real Bible passage.
And Nick Fury's
Which-
headstone.
Yeah, honestly, so funny because we were in New England, Jeff and I, recently, and there was this guy that had a T-shirt that said Ezekiel 25:17, and me looking for drama, and I'm like, oh, this is probably something about the ways of the world in terms of like media or something, because I just get turned off by it. And so I looked it up, and Jeff watches me look it up because I hadn't seen Pulp Fiction. I didn't know that this was like the Bible verse that was part of the movie, and the only thing that comes up is an image of Sam Jackson from the movie.
You thought it was like some like anti-mask, like
Yeah.
freedom from oppressive governments. or
Nobody
something.
just puts a Bible verse with no context
Which
on
would
the
be
T-shirt.
even funnier if that guy didn't know that it was.
Sam Jackson.
He's like, oh, a Bible verse T-shirt. I must have this for my Lord and
Honestly,
Savior Jesus
it was
Christ.
just a blue T-shirt
Yeah.
in white lettering, Ezekiel 25:17. So I was ready to fight this man, and then Sam Jackson pulls up in my Google search.
That was so funny.
You be you, sir. So yeah, this is post them killing a bunch of guys in this apartment, and then another guy jumps out of the bathroom, shoots a bunch of bullets at Jules and Vincent misses
everyone.
all of them.
They shoot him.
They shoot him, and it's at this point that Jules is like, "This is a miracle from God that we didn't get
I
hit."
need to give up my violent life.
Yeah.
I'm being given a second chance here.
Meanwhile, Marvin is like cowering in the corner.
Marvin's their contact.
Yeah. Oh, really?
We did not discuss Marvin earlier. But he's their contact who told them where to find these guys.
I did
Marvin
not
or
know that.
Martin?
Marvin.
I only know that because of how John Travolta says, "Marvin, what do you think?"
Oh.
But Sam Jackson's like having an existential crisis.
Yeah.
They head off into their car and they're driving off. And he's like, "This was a miracle. I'm giving up my violent life. I'm going to become a shepherd and walk the earth." And Vincent's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "The bullets missed. It was a fluke accident."
And so then John Travolta turns around in the
And
seat.
he's like, "Marvin, what do you think about this?"
You think it's like, I don't know what I think. You think the God came down and bam, Marvin's head explodes.
It's this super funny
Uncle Bob urban cowboy style.
It's this super wide. It's this super wide shot. You just see the back of the car. It's just red. I think this is top 5 funniest scenes in any movie.
For how horrible.
Every time I watch it, it cracks me up so much watching. And Cinder's like, "What the fuck did you do?"
It's also
He's like, "Whoa, whoa."
Best performance for John Travolta when he's like, "What the fuck you do, man? Oh God, I shot Marvin in the face, man. I don't know. I didn't mean to, man. The gun
went
just
off.
went
I don't know
off.
why.
It's like, I know the gun fucking went off. It's like, I'm sorry, man."
it's the depravity of the conversation that happens afterwards, especially since Sam Jackson is basically a born again Christian in that car. And he's like, what the fuck you gotta do that for? Like,
He's like, "Marcel doesn't have any friends in the valley." He's like, "We're driving in the middle of broad daylight here. Cops didn't notice stuff like driving while the guy's brain matter blasted on the window."
It's like, I gotta call a guy. I know one guy who's just over the hill.
Yeah.
Cut
Harvey
to.
Keitel.
The funniest thing in that scene, though, is that there's like a very prominent piece of brain matter in Sam Jackson's afro. It's just sitting there.
Yeah, maybe I take back that this movie isn't violent.
But they're in the kitchen of a one and only
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino playing Jimmy.
Okay, I have to mention something because it was bothering me. Given the recent news about Drake Bell,
Yes.
if you close your eyes in this scene,
No.
Tarantino sounds just like Drake Bell.
Yeah, of course I know how good it is.
I promise
Bonnie
you.
goes shopping, she buys shit. When I go shopping, I buy the real good stuff.
Honestly,
It ain't the coffee in my kitchen.
I welcome you guys to turn the lights off, close your eyes, listen to Tarantino. It sounds like Drake Bell.
You heard it here, folks. Go to our YouTube channel. Go to this YouTube video. Type in the comments, hashtag Tarantino with Drake Bell.
Yeah.
This is maybe the one good Tarantino performance.
Because he's just a dude.
Yeah, he always tries to make himself a badass in movies, and he is incapable of doing
From
it.
Dusk Until Dawn.
Dust Till Dawn,
Oh,
Django
God.
Unchained.
Yeah.
He always tries to make himself a badass, and it never works. And then in this movie, he just lets himself play like a shrimpy, like pathetic guy, and he's good at it.
Yeah, he is good at it. So
He's like,
then,
yeah, you look like nerds.
Jules calls Marcellus,
Yeah.
and Marcellus sends in the cavalry, which is the wolf, played
Yeah.
by Harvey Keitel.
Harvey Keitel.
Winston Wolfe.
Yes, which is such a good name.
It's such a good name. So Harvey Keitel is like this cleanup
Yeah, he's
crew
like the-
guy.
Yeah.
And it's called the Bonnie situation because Jimmy's wife's name is Bonnie, who is a nurse who's going to come home. And if she finds a bunch of gangsters there covered in blood and a dead body in the garage, it's not going to be a good time.
Yeah.
So Harvey Keitel comes over and is discussing like the cleanup situation that they have to do. They have 45 minutes, so they have to like wipe down the car. They have to clean their clothes. They have to get a bunch of blankets and quilts and dress up the car to make sure it's not being like noticed. All this while this is happening. I don't know. That's about it. That's just cleanup.
I mean, the wolf says, "I'll be there in 10 minutes," and then it cuts to a time card that says 9 minutes and 54 seconds.
Well,
later.
he says it's a 30-minute drive. I'll be there in 10, and then it cuts
Yeah,
to like
he gets there in exactly 10
because he's
minutes.
driving like so fast, and he's the wolf.
Yeah, and he comes in, he's like, "All right, you two are going to clean up the car. Jimmy, I need trash bags and linens."
Yeah, a lot of this is a little unnecessary to me. I think Tarantino's character is completely unnecessary. Like the stakes are that his wife is going to come home and see it. I think the stakes were already set. Sam Jackson was like,
we're covered in blood.
It's in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
I don't think we need Tarantino's character. I think we just need the stakes and the guy being ultra chill, like super, like he's like, I know exactly what to do. Clean up the blood. And that's it. He's like, I'm a master of my craft. Get some towels.
That is the wolf is pretty much just like, yeah, we'll clean it up. And like,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's, if anything, I don't even know if it's for Tarantino, but as much as it's for Harvey Keitel. Because it's like, if you have Harvey Keitel in your movie, it's like,
that's true.
Use him for something. But
Yeah.
it's like the way they use him here, I agree. It's just kind of like
Harvey Keitel
clean
pretty
up the
much
blood.
started Tarantino's career because he got Reservoir Dogs to be made and then he starred in it. So this feels like kind of a throwing him a bone as a thanks for that last movie he did him a solid on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So they're all cleaned up. They have new clothes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Sam
close-
Jackson has dropped the divine intervention for at least a brief moment in time to clean up the brain matter that he
and they're like,
was privy to.
You're the one who shot him in the face. You should be cleaning up the gun. I'm gonna do the windows. This is a really funny argument between them.
Yeah, and then they turn around at the end and they're like, "We loved watching you work." And like I just mentioned, the wolf didn't do
work.
anything. He didn't do
showed up
anything.
and just told them, clean the car.
Yeah, he showed up in a suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It cracks me up.
It's so funny.
So they ditch the car and then they're in a new vehicle. They get a cab and they go to the coffee
Diner.
shop
From the beginning.
Woo!
And they have a discussion about divine intervention.
Yep.
Oh my
Sam
god.
Jackson says he's going to walk the earth as a shepherd.
And then John.
Figure out what his purpose is.
Jeff and I, for days since we watched this a couple days ago, have been constantly quoting the line of, "But because you decided to do this on a transitional point in my life."
He's like, since you decided to pull this shit on a transitional period in my life.
That scene, and we might as well just get to it now because Vincent
Goes to the bathroom.
He takes a 10-2,
Yeah.
goes to take a shit, and everything. But whenever he goes to the bathroom, something bad happens, and then cue robbery.
Yeah.
So Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer get out their guns, and they're starting to rob the place. And then all while this is happening, Vincent's in the bathroom, and so Jules is sitting in his booth, and they're all like, "Get your wallets out," and he's taking trash bags and all that good stuff. So he goes up to Jules, and Jules has his wallet, and he's openly, freely giving him his wallet, but then he asks what's in the briefcase.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't tell you what's in the briefcase. It's telling me it's my boss's laundry.
Yeah.
It's like, your boss sends you out to do your laundry. It's like, from time to time.
Yeah.
And so at certain points, like, I'm going to count to 3. And if you don't show me what's in the case, and Jules eventually gives in, he opens the case. It's the gold light shining into him. And it's like, is that what I think it is? And again, just a gag. We don't really know what it is. Somewhere in between there and like, Jules gets the jump on him with his gun.
Yeah.
So he has a gun like pointed at his neck. He's obscured, and Honey Bunny is standing up on top of the booth.
She's screaming.
Screaming. And what I really love about the scene is how Jules mentally tears down Honey Bunny. Because she
Yeah.
starts off as like, "You take the gun off."
Yeah.
She's like,
He's like, "It's all right,
on
honey, it's all
fire,
right."
like in control.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the scene, she's like crying and like
Yeah,
saying, like,
I have
don't
to
wanna
pee.
do-"
I wanna go
like
home.
just the way he mentally destroys her without even like pointing a gun at her at all. Like, and he's being calm. He's like, "Tell her it's gonna be all right." Like,
Yeah, well, even Tim Roth's character, like he's all got this all big man energy. He's got the gun. All of a sudden, Sam Jackson gets the gun from him, pulls it on him, and he's just like, "Oh," like the rest of the day. And so much so that they walk out with without the briefcase, and they just kind of walk out and be like, "Oh man,
They
I
walk
guess
out
another
hugging each
failed."
other.
Yeah, they go.
And
Yeah.
Sam Jackson says he's trying to be the shepherd of evil men, and he's doing that and like ushering them into a better life.
Oh wow, well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's what he does.
and so then
His wallet has "bad motherfucker" written on it.
his wallet, Vincent at some point pops out of the
You're
bathroom.
not gonna do a goddamn thing.
And then Honey Bunny and Pumpkin leave.
Yes,
Yeah.
Vincent, Jules, we should probably go.
and they leave to triumphant music.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Wow, there's
Pulp-
a lot of chatter
A
going
lot
on.
of chatter, yeah.
Can you hear all that?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to the listener at home.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't usually get this much. Interesting.
Very interesting.
I just want to say, as a DP and especially a camera assistant, I have to give major kudos to the first ACs in this movie. Like, there were a lot of, and Tarantino does a lot of like single shot, sequences where it's either a big Steadicam shot, not necessarily, but there's a lot of characters moving in and out, in and out. And there's a point, and I can't remember what it is, but like there's characters crisscrossing in the frame, and the focus pull is really making decisions on what the focus of the scene is, and they do it so seamlessly. Not to mention, there's actually a specific like Steadicam AC for this. It says Steadicam AC, and this guy actually made a career out of it. I was looking on his page, and he made a career out of specifically Steadicam first AC.
Is that just like being a really good AC?
I guess.
It's like I just think about the differences, and it's like a specialized Steadicam AC just means you're really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Steadicam is more, affluent in the industry these
Maybe you're
days.
moving with the Steadicam because some AC ops. Well, not back in the 90s, you wouldn't though, because everything would be like there wouldn't be any wireless.
Yeah, there would be no wireless monitoring. Yeah.
Jeez, you remember back in the old days?
Girl, I remember the 90s.
Fucking wand for the focus. I guess that's why there would be a specialized Steadicam AC.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have like your own monitor wirelessly, then
Well,
there would be a particular job specifically just to like move and pull at the same time.
Honestly, for Steadicam though, your hands would not be on the camera for a first AC. So I think it probably would be monitoring, but you would have someone wrangling a cable behind the Steadicam operator at all times. Two-way monitor.
How would you change the focus though?
Wirelessly.
In the 90s? Mm-hmm. Did they have that?
Maybe.
Back then?
No, I'm double backing on that. I'm not entirely sure.
How did they pull focus in the 90s?
I don't know.
On camera.
Don't ask me. Don't look at me.
I'll ask my coworkers. Maybe none of this is important at all, but the whole movie was sharp as hell. So
Yes, they did a pretty astonishing
I agree
job.
that there are very particular focus choices
Yeah.
being made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we like having people like you who have different perspectives on this stuff on our show,
Yeah.
who understand, like when Stuart was able to talk about sound in our blowout episode. We like having someone who actually knows what cameras are. Because when we look at it, we're like, look pretty.
The light's good.
I will say, I think with Rob Richardson and Tarantino, that is a golden combination there. I'm not as much of a fan of the work in this one in terms of lighting. And I think shot structure is purely out of Tarantino in this movie. But
Just trivial question. And I know we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes right now.
yeah,
Your opinion, what's the golden Quentin Tarantino, Rob Richardson standard that they've achieved so far?
like what movies they're
Yeah.
best in the combination of? Damn,
It's really getting loud out there.
it is.
Shut the fuck up. We're recording a podcast.
Hey, Jack, can you go handle that? Yeah, give me a second.
Honestly, I adore Inglourious Bastards, but I think Django Unchained is like a full package to me, especially in terms of like technical prowess.
Yeah.
Django Unchained's a very impressive movie.
Yeah.
You know what else was a very impressive movie and how it did at the box office? Pulp Fiction.
Oh yeah.
Pulp Fiction was the first indie movie to gross over $100 million.
Holy crap.
It cost $8 million, so it made over 10 times its budget. Actually, over 12 or 13 times its budget. And this,
There's nothing we can really do about the chatter.
yeah, we'll for the next episode we'll adjust position. But the big strategy this movie pulled, and the big reason that it was able to be such a major success, is that it was what was called the Iron Curtain method of the Harvey Weinstein patented thing. Like, fuck that guy. But basically, they only had one screening of this movie for like 4 months prior to when it came out. So no one was able to see it except for the people who were in that room who said it was amazing. And so it just built it snowballed this anticipation for it that no one else was allowed to see it except for those people who kept talking about it. Led to it having a pretty major, I don't have its opening weekend right now, but it made $213 million worldwide, $100 million domestically.
Wow.
So which is like it made over 10 times its budget, just in America alone. It was the 10th biggest film of 1994, even though it played on less screens than the top 20. So it's very much a word of mouth hit. Everyone was going to see Pulp Fiction. It was interested. It really changed the game in terms of how indie movies are marketed and presented. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It was nominated for 7 Oscars and won Best Screenplay.
Oh, only one.
Yeah, including one for our boy John Travolta.
For lead actor.
Yep, for lead actor in a major motion picture.
And this would be his second nomination.
Yes, his first for Saturday Night Fever. And after he gets nominated for this,
Wait, are you telling me Sam Jackson was not nominated?
He was nominated,
Uma
but
Thurman
he
were
didn't
both
win.
nominated, but they did not win.
Which
For
I think
lead actor?
supporting.
Supporting. Sam Jackson got supporting actor. Travolta got lead. Uma Thurman got supporting
You're going to tell me
actress.
that when you watch this movie, John Travolta's history aside, same with Sam Jackson's history aside, you're going to tell me that Jules is a supporting character to Vincent Vega?
Sure, there was some contention about this.
There had to have been.
I think, like, of all the deserving performances of accolades, Sam Jackson has more than Travolta in this movie. In my
Way
opinion.
more.
Sam Jackson was notably upset that he was actually beaten in the Oscars this year by Martin Landau and Ed Wood, which I think is an astonishing performance, and I think Martin Landau deserved that award. However, I think Sam Jackson, like, his real award for this movie was like the icon status this character has taken on in the culture.
Yeah.
And still holds to this day.
I mean, an Oscar here and there would be pretty nice,
Yes.
though.
It's been his only nomination.
No.
Sam Jackson was only ever nominated for Pulp Fiction.
Wait, I have to reflect. I have to seep
You
back
said
into
earlier you
my.
did, yeah.
I have to seep back into my. Oh, I don't like Sam Jackson. So.
And this is also Travolta's last nomination. He does not get nominated again.
You're right.
But what he does
Hey,
get...
he's still alive.
Yeah.
What are you?
Who knows?
What are you trying to pull?
Paradise City next spring. Maybe it'll be big. But off his nomination from this...
Did he get nominated for an Emmy for American Crime Story,
Yes.
which we're not covering?
He did. We're not covering American
We're
Crime.
not covering, but he has
We're
been,
not covering Welcome Back, Kotter either.
Fuck you if you think we will. And so he did get some more accolade notices after this. Not much, but
It came around again.
yeah.
But what he does get off of this movie, along with that nomination, is a career revival because people are now like, oh, John Travolta's still good.
Yeah.
And after this, he gets offered so many movies, many of which we will be covering, but there's plenty that he couldn't do because his offers were just really going up.
Yeah.
This was a major career redemption, and it launches him instantly into A-list status, which isn't bad for a movie that he only got paid $20,000 a week for.
Yeah.
Yep.
But someone described this movie as resurrecting John Travolta and film noir, because there's a lot of copycat movies of this that come out in the years following.
I guess it is a little film noir.
Boondock Saints is very much just like a ripoff of this movie. And people start paying it more attention to indies after this,
Yeah.
which kind of leads to
Are
where
we
we're
so thankful for that?
which kind of leads to where we are nowadays, where indies are like $40 million movies.
Yeah.
Because after this, everyone's like, "Ooh, I got to be in an indie movie." A lot of big actors, and that
Yeah.
just leads to indie movies becoming big actor movies instead of indie movies.
Yeah.
Just this morning, I saw a headline that said, "Indie movies: French Dispatch and Last Night in Soho releasing on the same day this October." And it's like, well, I'm looking forward to both those movies, but Wes Anderson and Edgar Wright are not directing indie movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are not.
I mean, indie in the sense of, not a Disney film, not a Marvel film, not a.
like,
It's taken on a different
what
definition.
used to
now.
be called the mid-budget movie is now called the indie movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a deeply sad state that we're in. This
It
movie
is.
also caused a lot of controversy. Presidential candidate Bob Dole in 1996, who was running for Republican, the Republican candidate, would end up becoming it, running against Bill Clinton. But he consistently attacked this movie as propagating a culture of gratuitous violence and depravity.
Amen.
Also of promoting the romance of heroin, which I think this movie shows heroin in a very bad light.
Yeah. Frankly, scary.
Yes. This movie made me very much not want to do heroin.
Maybe at least want to try it. Maybe it made me want to try it just once.
Just don't snort it.
Just don't snort it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't
Or
be
else
like
you
Nia.
will have a Eric Stoltz stabbing you in the chest.
I would love Eric Stoltz to stab me in the chest.
Eric Stoltz stabbed
Hey,
me.
hey, John Travolta
He could
stabbed
stab
her
me
in
any
the
day of
chest.
the week.
He can stab,
He's the one who brought her into the situation. He's not
Travolta
gonna
stabbed me,
her in the
Daddy.
chest.
he can stab me anywhere he wants.
Wait, Eric Stoltz or John Travolta?
Either of them. Both. At the same time.
Okay.
But yeah, just off the heat of this movie, it launches Tarantino's career, relaunches Travolta's career, it launches indies in Hollywood, gives Harvey and Bob Weinstein real credit in the industry. Miramax launches off after this. Because at this point, a major studio like Disney owning an indie company like Miramax was kind of a fluke. It wasn't something that happened a lot. Off of this, every major studio is like, I need to buy an indie company.
Yeah.
That's you got like Fox Searchlight and I can't think of what the other company's specific brandings are, but a lot of them get indie brands. And it's kind of what relaunches cinema in the mid-90s after kind of a period of ossification. Because it was very company driven, very like distributor driven. Mm-hmm. It kind of redistributes power back to like filmmakers in some respects, and then eventually we get back to where it's company driven nowadays again. But for that little period, it led to the period where guys like Tarantino and David Fincher and the Coen brothers and all of them start popping off in the industry.
Yeah.
And so this movie heralded a change in the industry.
Our boy
John Travolta, he helped make it happen. He has a redemption after we've watched like 10 non-existent movies in a row.
Right. After all those really shitty 80s.
We went through Boris and Natasha so that something like this could really reinvigorate the show, reinvigorate his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of people gravitate to this podcast, specifically to this episode, given its star status of a movie.
Yes, this is a major movie, and hopefully people enjoyed listening to us talk about it.
There have been a lot of podcast episodes on Pulp Fiction, but we'll see.
But we'll see. There haven't been a lot of podcast episodes on the movie we're covering next week.
Oh, no.
That's right, folks. Oh, no. Before I say it, does anyone have any last thoughts on Pulp Fiction or anything to say?
It's a good movie. Yeah. I think there's no shame in saying that it's memorable and it has and will continue to stand the test of time as just, being very creative in its new, enlightened decisions and choices.
This is a great movie. I think it's been very warped in culture. A lot of people have used this to validate bad opinions and bad behavior. Mm-hmm. I think it's very much.
Are you talking about film critics?
Like film bros and whatnot.
Film bros, yeah.
Really gravitate to this in a negative light. I think it kind of fits into the same spot as Heath Ledger's Joker, or Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, or Jared Leto's Joker, or hell, Jack Nicholson's Joker. Just say my name, Jack. Stop.
I think it's because they touch on Tarantino and then they go to like James Cameron or Christopher Nolan, and it's just string of white men directors. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say Tarantino necessarily like erased people of color in the industry, but
these movies that on their own are just very good, and things that are very good, like I said, the Jokers, people kind of warp them into their own political opinions or viewpoints. Mythological status. And it's important to kind of cut that bullshit away and evaluate these things for what they are.
Yeah.
Which is a very good movie.
Yeah.
That I had a great time watching.
Yeah,
again.
just 100% fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Becca, do you have any last thoughts on Pulp Fiction? This was your first time watching it. I wasn't sure if you had any overarching thoughts.
No, I mean, besides that, it's insanely fun. Sam Jackson is good.
Good.
It is good, and I will reside back into my hatred for Sam Jackson when this podcast is over.
Sam Jackson's great in every movie. Never been bad.
Okay. Watch your profanity.
I'm just glad I don't have to be here next week. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is next week we'll be covering. Because, after this, Travolta clearly doesn't make any bad decisions. He never makes a misstep, and I'm sure it's only hits from here on out. Anyway, next week we're covering White Man's Burden. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to tune in for that episode next week.
Close out the episode.
Make sure to tune in next week for that. Also, please make sure to rate, review, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode on whatever platform you're listening to. It really helps us out. It's really important. We're asking you guys, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or YouTube, hit us with a like, subscribe, comment. They mean a lot, and we appreciate them. Also, you can find us at Travolting Pod on Twitter or Instagram for updates and fun stuff. You can pop into our Reddit at r/Travolting. Email any comments or questions to travoltingpodcast@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at Jeff W. Sweeney.
Find me on Instagram at Stuart Elmore 95.
Stuart is like breaking, knowing that he has to talk about White Man's Bernstein. Becca, did you want to plug yourself in any way?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Becca Lynn Artist.
This is true.
Yeah. Find some of my photography, some of my film work.
Yeah. Special thanks to Rebecca Johnson for our graphic design. I can thank you in person this time.
Woohoo.
And Michael Van Bodegum Smith for our theme music, the new version, which is taking you out right now.
We love it, Michael.
I love it.
Michael will also be joining us on the show soon. Wink, wink, wink. Have a great week, folks. See you soon.
Bye.